I get to meet my photographer. No, you don't need it. You don't need it. But I do have that. Got my handy dandy brand new iPhone 15. That's the price you get when you got the whole seat of water. At least it is for me.
Yeah, rice doesn't work on his phone.
No, right? No longer. Actually, the other one looks like it came back alive, but it's too late. I saw the features for the iPhone 15.
Now you got it back.
You said, oh, not you too. That's your husband. It's in a drawer. Okay, well, that makes me feel slightly better. Actually using it. For nostalgic sake, you just open up and look at it every once in a while. Like, it's gotta be. Right? The flip phone. Yeah. What? What kind of size is that? You mean the ones that are like this big?
Oh, like, yeah, there's my case here.
You did not have a phone like that. Well, I wasn't gonna say it, but never went there.
Everybody gather up.
Taking the picture. I feel like I have to be like, don't stop. All right. We're gonna take 3 just for. All right, ready? 1, 2. 1, 2, 3. And last one. Thank you. I was like, thanks, Julio. Y'all are gonna come out looking fabulous. I did. Well, yeah, but you did it perfect. I couldn't do it because the paper was on it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm so done with them. Right?
Good evening and calling the meeting to order. Welcome to the West Hartford Public Schools regular Board of Education meeting. It is Tuesday, June the 4th. Charlotte, may you please call the roll?
Mr. Gagnon?
Here.
Mr. Goldman?
Here.
Dr. Harris?
Here.
Ms. Merrimon?
Here.
Mrs. Nezzarella?
Present.
Dr. Thomas Farquharson?
Here.
Mrs. Yagaloff?
Present.
Student Representative Chris Ramal?
Present.
And Student Representative Liam Wright.
Here.
Thank you. And Liam, may you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We do not have a revision to the agenda, and now it is time for public communications. This is where we're able to hear from you, your thoughts, your questions, your suggestions. Each individual is allowed 3 minutes to speak. We ask for you please to come to the podium and to share your name and your town of residence. While you are speaking, please be mindful of Charlotte, who will hold up a yellow card when you have 1 minute remaining in your time. And when your time has expired, you will see a red card. We ask for you please to conclude your sentence and respectfully take your seat at that time. It is board policy where we do not respond to comments that while they're being made. However, we are attentively listening to what is being shared. With this being the first meeting of the month, we are receiving comments on both agenda and non-agenda items. But just for the purpose of our awareness, the agenda for this evening includes equity advancement in West Hartford Public Schools, district profile and performance report, financial report for period ending April 30th, 2024. We do start with those speaking on agenda items, and I see a list here, but there is no one signed up. So I will ask anyone in the audience care to speak on an agenda item. Seeing none, we'll move to our list of those speaking on general comments or non-agenda items, and we'll go in the order as listed here. And I do apologize in advance if I mispronounce anyone's name. First, we have David Johnston, I believe.
Sorry for my summer attire, but it's summer. David Johnston, 22 Beverly Road. And, not doing so well with that. 4 kids have gone through the West Hartford school system, all gone on to college and done successfully, had a great preparation. I have been semi-retired for 12 years, but 12 years ago I started substitute teaching in West Hartford, and I've been doing that for 11 years. And I do mostly middle school in West Hartford. I love middle school students. I met the mother of one of my favorite students coming in tonight. Our kids do really well. We send a lot of kids to college, good higher education. 3 of my 4 kids went off to college. One of my kids was not in what I call the high roller category and had a tough time. We have a lot of kids in our school system who don't fit the profile that we like to brag about, which is worth bragging about in terms of kids going off to good schools. And I work with a lot of those tough kids every day. And because of the work I've done on college access and success, and I run a bunch of conferences on that, different organization, I've come up with something called a college-going culture, how to create a college-going culture. I have an outline for that. Shaena and I have actually met and talked about that. And I can share the current draft of that with you. I think maybe Shannon I'll figure out how to get emails and can send them to folks to look at. And it talks about how do we nurture both the kids and parents to think about higher education. And to me, higher education is not just college, it's everything. You know, it's everything from Yale to UConn to cosmetology school to barbering to auto mechanics to welding an electric boat and a whole bunch of other things that are possible. I believe every kid, no matter what their where they stand academically, can go on to higher education of some type. And it's up to us to figure out what that is, to work with their families, with their parents, their guardians, to figure out what that is, and to create that college-going culture that most of us took for granted. If we had parents who went to college or siblings, neither of my parents went to college, but I had 3 older siblings who did. So for me, it was automatic that I was going to go to college. We have a lot of kids who don't fit that mold, and they need help, their families need help, and I've been working for years now on what this might look like. I've been talking about it with initially the 2 principals in the 2 middle schools, a little bit with some high school folks, and I talk about it with a lot of students to get some ideas. I asked one kid the other day, where are you going to college? He said, Mr. Johnston, I'm only in 7th grade. And I said, okay, I get that, but do you want to go to college? Yes. Well, where do you want to go to college? Well, I don't know. The whole idea was to change his focus from the disruption he was causing in his class to focus on something serious. And I've done that with a bunch of kids, and it's amazing how quickly they can shift into a different framework. So I think I know how to do that. I think I could work with teachers and other people to do that. I'd like to come back maybe in the fall, have a regular agenda item, and talk about it in more detail so we could have some back and forth. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, we have Tali Kest.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. After I spoke at last month's Board of Ed meeting, some people spoke after me, and I wanted to broach some of what they said. If you speak to people who are actively involved in their Jewish community, the majority would tell you that education is one of the most important tools in combating anti-Semitism. Education is a core component of Jewish and American values. We just celebrated Jewish History Month, which is a great opportunity to incorporate and learn about Jewish contributions to society. I want to also recognize that the equity report that Theresa Rangel put together, included in tonight's meeting, incorporates anti-Semitism and the Holocaust, and I want to encourage that we continue to highlight this subject even more. An Anti-Defamation League study from November 2023 shows that 75% of Jewish college students experienced anti-Semitism, and 75% of those students are dissatisfied with campus response. And that was back in November before things escalated. One of the people who spoke after me at the last meeting brought up not adopting the congressional definition of anti-Semitism and told a story about how the public school here in West Hartford reacted appropriately when she was younger to an anti-Semitic incident. To me, this misses the point. Why should we wait and be reactive when we can be proactive and teach tolerance and teach against hate so that hate of Jews so that anti-Semitic incidents don't happen in the first place? Brandeis University closed classes for an entire day so as to teach on this subject. Doing so highlights the importance of this topic. Every day in the news, I hear of more incidents of anti-Semitism. Brooklyn Museum being vandalized, Israeli embassies being burned, graduations being taken over. It's happening so often that it feels as if it's normalized, which is eerily similar to pre-Holocaust times in Europe. We can't let that happen. We are only as free as our ideas. We have a collective responsibility to shed light on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Miriam, last initial B.
To the esteemed Board of Education members, good evening. Thank you for this opportunity to address you. My name is Miriam Bleich, and I am a proud Jewish American. My mother immigrated to this country to escape anti-Semitism from the former Soviet Union in the late 1970s. Fast forward, for the last 6 years, my family has lived in West Hartford, and we now have 4 children in the public school system, one of whom is receiving intensive academic services. I am also very passionate about disability inclusion. That will be part 2 for another meeting. Today, I stand before you, a willing and active partner in working to ensure that not only all of our children receive equal education opportunities, but that their right to do so, free from hate, bigotry, and bias, is protected and upheld. We cannot deny the facts. Acts of anti-Semitism are happening in town and in schools, and we have an obligation to teach our children to stand up to all forms of hate while we lead by example. That being said, I am ready and eager to witness with my own eyes that unanimously our school and town leadership demonstrates their moral clarity and fortitude to be unafraid to speak up and speak out about anti-Semitism and terrorism, naming it for what it is, the same way they would for any other forms of hate and threats to our democracy. To support and empower these efforts, I strongly urge you to partner with Jewish agencies and those of us concerned parents who are truly committed to our democratic values, education, and critical thinking to learn how to prevent and address anti-Semitism. Additionally, adopting the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism would be a tremendous step. The West Hartford Human Rights Commission has already adopted IHRA in 2022, and last Wednesday, the town of Fairfield adopted the IHRA definition in a well-attended ceremony, including police chief and superintendent. There are several other towns in Connecticut who have also adopted IHRA. In closing, for the sake of our children and generations to come, and in accordance with the Educational Equity Mission 1800, the message and accompanied actions must be consistent and clear. We speak up and we speak out against anti-Semitism and all forms of hate, as they have no place in any of our schools. And we must prioritize education that fosters our democratic values, tolerance, acceptance, and inclusivity to make our world a peaceful and productive place for all. Please count me in as a partner and a resource. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Brooke Daly, I believe.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brooke Daly. I am a West Hartford resident. I have two wonderful children, my daughter Rose, who is a freshman at Conard, and my son Finn, who is a fifth grader at Wolcott Elementary, and he will be going to Sedgwick next year. I'm here today because I'd like to speak briefly just about Disability Awareness Days as well as disability education. The reason why that is important to me, excuse me, is because my son is disabled. He has a dual diagnosis of Down syndrome, autism, and a congenital heart defect. When he was a young child, I approached West Hartford Public Schools and asked if they would be okay with celebrating World Down Syndrome Day. We started with 1 or 2 schools, and then it quickly spread to all the elementary schools. It's been very successful. A big thank you to Melissa Caballero for being a great support in that. It has not really taken off as much as I would like with the middle schools and the high schools, which is disappointing. And I'm not really sure why that is. Like I said, Finn has a dual diagnosis. I know there has been some pushback on autism awareness and acceptance, and there's been some debate about that. And I do understand that to a certain degree. However, I just feel like we need more education around disability. So I guess my rebuttal to that would be is if you do not like or care for the disability days, then the alternative to that would be putting disability education into the curriculum. Because I'm telling you, I've been going into the, Finn's 11 now, I've been going into the school since he was 3 years old. And I talked to many of the kids and the teachers and the paras, and there is a huge gap in what people understand what disability is and isn't, and a lot of stereotypes. And I think the only way that we're going to combat that is through further education, disability education. So I know we're on the edge of summer here, but I'm asking you to think about this over the summer and help me encourage the teachers next year to possibly consider speaking about this more. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. That is all who we have signed up on the list, but we'll ask if there is anyone in the audience who would like to speak on any comment. Once again, all right, well, thank you. We will pause and conclude public communications and continue on to NAF's non-staff communications and reports, where we will receive our student board representatives' updates. And I'm smiling because this is a significant one, for not only is it our last board meeting of the academic school year, but the last meeting where we will be able to be before these lovely students who share their time with us and giving updates regarding their respective schools. So we'll ask for them to do the same. And we'll also ask, and I have been given permission to do so, if once they conclude their updates, if they can share what their plans are following graduation. Let us please begin with Chris giving an update on Conard.
So for Conard, the girls track and field runners, they were the runners-up for the CCC tournament. Conard Drama received 15 Halo Award nominations for the play The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, and they ended up winning 3 of them. And the school year is finally over for seniors, and the exams are underway, and graduation is next Monday. And that is all for Conard. And so my plans for next year, I'm attending UConn, and I'll be dual majoring in computer science and neuroscience.
Pardon, Liam giving an update on Hall.
Yes. So also in the realm of athletics, the boys track and field team won the Class L track and field championship, and the girls were the runner-ups in the Class L championship. Also yesterday, the boys were third at the state open championship, and we have 9 boys and 6 girls who qualified and will be traveling to the University of New Hampshire for the New England championships. For just general school updates, prom for seniors occurred this past Saturday at the Basketball Hall of Fame in Springfield, which was a very fun time. Graduation will be held on June 10th on the Monday, and Safe Grad will be following it, which we are all very excited to see what the theme reveal is. And also, our comedy troupe, The Answer Show, will have its last show on this Thursday, June 6th, at the Black Box at 7 p.m. And there was also an art show that occurred a couple weeks ago where students displayed their many different artistic capabilities. And next year, I will be attending Columbia University, where I will be majoring in political science. Thank you.
Thank you both. Thank you both. And you're not off the hook just yet, because we want to recognize you, and we have a small token to share with you. But before doing so, I want to share just a few words of appreciation. Before I do that, I don't want to monopolize the time. Colleagues, would any of you or Superintendent like to share any comments, farewell comments, to our wonderful student representatives?
If I may, a bit of a point of order for Liam. I think you left something out in your report. As I recall, there was a Hall student at the State Open who took first place in the pole vault competition. I'm wondering if you can remind me of who that might have been.
Yes, it was me. I tied my personal best with a height of 15 and a half feet. Thank you.
So, sorry to embarrass you that way, but I did want to offer you personal congratulations for that athletic prowess and that great accomplishment. But I really want to thank Chris. I want to thank you and Liam both. You've been amazing ambassadors for your school. I've been very, very impressed with each of you in terms of the feedback that you give, the thoughtfulness of your comments, really at times the pause you'll take and just sort of either making the spot on comment or a question that is so mature and demonstrates such wisdom beyond your years. It's not been unnoticed by anyone here on the board. I wish you both the very, very best. You have very bright and promising futures ahead of you, and I couldn't be thankful enough to have such excellent student representatives in my first year here, so thank you.
Should we just go over down? Yes, all right.
I'm just so proud of the both of you, very impressed by the both of you. Continue to raise your voices the way that you have. You're both just kind and compassionate human beings, and that's exactly what our world needs right now. You're the ones that you've been waiting for, and I'm excited for y'all to take the reins and really for us to follow. So I wish you both the very best, and just stay true to you and represent for West Hartford.
I agree that we should be following their lead, but not over the pole vault. I will pass, hard pass on that. I want to thank both of you for really reminding us of why we're here and what the mission is for us. It's you all and your path from the elementary schools all the way up through representing your high schools here. I certainly have been so impressed as everybody else here is with not only what you've chosen to speak on, but when you choose to speak. Because you weigh in on very key moments, and again, you remind us of kind of refocus on what our guiding principles should be. I think we do all can't wait to see what's next for you, and I think we expect great things, and you already have done that. So thanks again for your service.
So I know our overlap has been somewhat brief, but just even in the short amount of time, I've just been so impressed that you even took on this opportunity. I know that my 18-year-old self would not have been in a place where I could have had the maturity and the commitment and the time that it takes to be part of something like the Board of Education. And you're just ahead of your curve in terms of what you've learned and the learning curve you brought back to us. And I think you owe the places you'll go to quote Dr. Seuss. I think the sky is very much the limit for both of you. And I hope you, as similar to what LaToya said, that you keep your humility and your groundedness, because that will go so incredibly far as you try to navigate more and more complex challenges in our world. So feel really good about you guys being our next generation. So thank you.
So again, I'd like to say thank you to both of you. Choosing to serve and give the time is a real commitment, and I know you have a lot going on your senior year. So thank you. I've enjoyed hearing about all your involvements and updates from both schools. I hope you continue to look for ways to give back. We need people to stand up and to serve, and I know you will make a difference.
So as someone who once did the long jump, very impressed by anybody who did the pole vault, because that's a dimension I never thought of or would want to. But appreciate how you both contributed each different ways, and I agree with the comments were very good when you spoke. And I wish you well next year and hope all the best for you, and hope it's a good 4 years in each university.
So I'd just echo what everybody else has said here. Really thank you for taking the time and being part of our board. I know what a commitment it is in terms of time, and you're sitting through these long meetings. So I greatly appreciate that. It was also important to me to hear your perspective, because sometimes we're sitting here and nobody here is a student, and then you guys will tell us something that, you know, kind of resonates differently. I wish you lots of luck in your academic achievements. And I wish you good 4 years at your respective schools, and come back and visit us.
And Liam and Chris, I echo all that has been shared. It has been quite an honor to have your skill sets here as student representatives, but most importantly, as human beings, reminding us of resilience. And why do I say that? Because if I do the math, it's 2024. That means you started your freshman year in the 2019-2020 school year, or 2020-2000. Bottom line, you started high school at a point in time when a lot of your learning was virtual. Your freshman year was mostly virtual. Yet you persevered, you withstood all, and here you are. You represented your schools quite well here, and as Gail made reference to, it's important to hear a student perspective, because yes, we're adults, and yes, it may have been some years ago that we were in high school, but you helped remind us of the importance of not forgetting what's important, because we're here to serve you. So thank you for representing your classmates. Thank you for representing you. Thank you for doing well now, and we anticipate nothing else for you moving forward. Boy, Columbia and UConn are so fortunate to have you. So thank you so very much. We have a small token here that is from our board collectively to let you know how much we appreciate you. And while we pass this out, if we can all collectively please give a round of applause. All right, continuing on to unfinished business, which we do not have any of. Then new business, which we do not have any of. Now moving on to staff communications and reports, where we will receive our superintendent's update. Passing it to you, Superintendent Vicinas.
Thank you very much. I have a number of shares and kind of cheers to begin with. First and foremost, we're incredibly proud of our two Charter Oak International Odyssey of the Mind teams and their teacher, Michelle Hadlock, who competed at the OM World Finals held at Iowa State University earlier in May. There was a total of 14 fifth grade students representing not only Charter Oak, not only West Hartford, not only Connecticut, but the entire United States in their problem-solving competition that boasted teams from 14 other countries. The Charter Oak team placed 5th and 9th in their respective age groups among a talented field of over more than 30 competitors across each of those categories. So just an incredible performance. I heard a little bit in the students' report about both Conard and Hall's theater department taking home multiple awards in the 21st annual Halo Award competition. We were competing between roughly 6,500 students, 175 schools. Conard and Hall collectively took home 5 awards to include Best Scenic Design, Conard Senior, Rachel Decca for You Can't Take It With You. Best Performance by a Supporting Actress in a Play, Hall Jr., Catherine Devlin as Bunny Flingus in The House of the Blue Leaves. Best Performance by a Leading Actress in a Classical Play, Hall Jr., Riley Shagensky, I apologize if I mispronounced that, in The House of the Blue Leaves. Best Performance by a Featured Actor in a Play, Conard Sr. Ben Dollar as Mr. Kirby in You Can't Take It With You. And Best Male Standout Performance in an Ensemble Performance, Conard Sr. James Tebow in The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. You have already heard about the amazing performance, Double L wins and open state opens, and the Hall girls finishing as the runner-ups in the Class Ls. Conard boys volleyball, exceptional season. They made it to states. They had a really tough loss during an incredibly exciting game against East Hartford. Conard Senior, Ty Nguyen, will be featured as an artist at the 2024 I Create exhibition at the Bruce Museum in Greenwich, Connecticut. Ty's piece was selected from among nearly 1,000 submissions from over 60 schools in the region, Connecticut, New York, and New Jersey. This regional exhibition features enigmatic young artists with unique styles. It's both an accomplishment and a true honor to be featured. Kudos as well to Amelia Patashner, a 9th grade Hall artist who took first place, Best in Show, at the recent Student Art Showcase Awards competition hosted by Western Connecticut State University. And when I send you a copy, I have a copy of her charcoal sketch. It's simply amazing. Keeper of the Light is public. Okay. I'm very I couldn't remember which of these awards are still secret. Craig Diamond has this year's recipient of the Keeper of the Light Award, which recognizes and honors a staff member for their exemplary practice and professionalism, dedication to excellence that exemplifies the values, traditions, standards of our Pupil Services Department and their commitment to leadership and advancing its overall mission. Extremely proud of Craig. Everyone who's worked with Craig will sing his praises. Very cool stuff happening over at Bugby Elementary. If you have opportunity to drive by, they've commissioned muralist Michael Rice to create a compelling and beautiful outdoor display. And in addition, as part of an educational component to it and a service component, students across grades 3 through 5 have contributed to the project through fundraising efforts that highlighted their own artistic ability and creativity, creating and selling over 400 colorful ceramic necklaces to help raise money for the project. Last and certainly far from least in terms of celebrations, yesterday afternoon it was announced Conard chemistry teacher Nora McHugh is named as our 2024 West Hartford Teacher of the Year. We are certainly very, very proud of Nora. We are no less proud of our other finalists, Jill Daly and Kim Fine, both from Duffy, and all of the exemplary educators across the district for whom they represent. In terms of operations, I'll share that Mr. Duarte and his entire team, as well as the leadership team, have been exceptionally busy working to fill the 11 elementary assistant principal positions. We expect to be making public announcements about those filled by this week's end. In addition, we're fairly far along in separate processes for both Bugby principalship and Conard principalship. We've conducted public and staff. I'm saying we, it's really Julio and a number of others conducted public and staff focus groups and scheduled first round interviews. We hope to narrow from among a very competitive pool and have announcements of these two positions potentially just prior to the close of the school year, but we'll be working quickly for that. To a point made in some of the public comment, both Hall and Conard have hosted career exploration events with representatives from the West Hartford Police Department, Fire Department, from paramedic units, from other first responders, and also from our military. Career Path representatives showcased a variety of specialized equipment and skills as students engaged directly with hands-on opportunity to test their skills and ask questions. Phenomenal events. I was able to attend several of them. I'm very excited by the attention and the focus we continue to put in that area. By way of reminder, I think we heard it, but high school graduation is this coming Monday, June the 10th. The ceremonies do begin promptly at 5 p.m., so any public listening, please be on the lookout for communication from your respective school principals to know exactly when to arrive to ensure available parking and all other directions. And by way of a reminder to all across our community, our last formal day of school for other than our seniors is Thursday, June the 13th, and it will follow a Wednesday early release. That is my report, pending any questions.
Thank you so much. Any questions or comments with the superintendent's update we've received? All right. Well, this is always a wonderful time of year of graduation, seeing the blues and the reds. And we know we also are proud of our military inductees as well and their pursuits, and thank them already for their service. So thank you so very much, Mr. Vicinas. Now moving on to staff reports and board discussions, where we will receive the equity advancement in the West Hartford Public Schools. And as the team comes to the table, we'll pass to Mr. Vicinas for the introductions.
Excellent. I will introduce these fine professionals as they get set up and plugged in. Obviously, you all know Theresa Rangel, my Executive Director for Equity Advancement. She is joined on her left, our right, by Ms. Shaena Gray, and also Amy, I'm having a moment, Amy Young, who is Yarbarough, oh my goodness, I'm sorry, Amy, who is our Director of our outreach coordinator for our open choice program. And they are here this evening to present on the topic of equity advancement. Have no fear, it's coming up. And with that, I will turn it over to Theresa. Amy Young, by the way, is one of my former students.
Good evening, board, and thank you for welcoming us to do a presentation. Again, Superintendent Vicinas already introduced my fellow comrades in the work that we do. I guess I'll just start with just thanking everyone for, first of all, I'm wrapping up my first year, started in September. And what I can say just off the bat is, in looking to join West Hartford, I was told lots of things about the district. I was told about the amazing students. I was told about the dedicated staff, the exceptional leaders. And what I can tell you after spending one full school year with you is that there were no lies told. And I feel honored and blessed to be here, and honored and blessed to have the company that joins me tonight to talk to you about the work that we do in the Office of Equity Advancement. It has definitely been a fun ride for the year. I've learned so much, and I've had such an opportunity to engage with all of our participants and people who enjoy the time here in West Hartford. So just to, I'm like, where to start? A little bit of an overview of where we're going. Is it stuck? Didn't you tell me not to worry? What do you mean, track it over? 1 second. Keep talking? Okay. So this evening we're going to walk you through the work of the Office of Equity Advancement and with some of our subgroups that we work and how we work through our work. And we're going to start with, it's so funny, this happens every single time. Oh, the lady will have to tell me what magic trick you did for that. Thank you. Oh, okay. So you can't actually see it. Oh. Sorry, this is, okay. We will roll with the punches. So I want to ground us in our vision for equity and all that we do. What I love about West Hartford's approach to equity is that they understand that it's multi-tiered and that there's these different components that all contribute and that overlay the work of equity. High quality pedagogy, social emotional learning, all equity, as far as I'm concerned, really develops, it's about relationship building, and family partnerships are such a huge component of that work. And then, of course, we have cultural competence, which as we close, as teachers are in the classrooms with their students, and they close their doors and they learn with our students, it's extremely important that they are culturally competent educators and that we are culturally competent leaders to help guide them and keep them safe through that process. I'm like, I can't tell. Sorry. So I'll start off with the EDC, our Equity Diversity Council. And this year, so this is a body of individuals that come from each of our schools and come together to work to collectively move in and advance our work in equity. I'll give you some highlights for this group. We started off the year with am I in the right spot? Oh, what in the world? I'm telling you. We started out the year with a three-part series of engagement for professional learning. At the beginning of the year, I met with the EDC and I asked them for their hopes and dreams. We kind of did like a chart where we're like, okay, what are the keeps? What are the things that you treasure and what do you dream? And it was really an important element of starting this work because they've already been in this work for so long. It's not the easiest task. When I went into Naugatuck, I was the first person in the role, and you get to kind of define the role, and you get to create, and you're growing with the people that you are, starting that journey with. Walking into West Hartford, that role has already been established, and so it's really important to acknowledge all the hard work that's already been done, because a lot of the foundation and groundwork has already been put in place. But the work of equity is not something that's stagnant. There is never a done, right? You don't ever get to check the box and say we're done in this work. And so it was really important to kind of have feelers out for what are some of the practices they would like to continue, what are some of the things that we could let go of, and what are some of the dreams that we had for how we can continue and move forward. One of the things that came up really high on their list was professional development for them. A lot of the EDC members are super comfortable and have spent a lot of time giving professional development in schools and working with others. But they also wanted to make sure they continue to have their cup filled. So I brought in a really high quality equity leader in the state, Kathy Taylor, and she worked on a three-part series, really kind of helping the group define what their dreams were, what they'd like to see, and reflecting on their own practices and their own where they are in their journey. I think a misnomer for people is that when you think about people who are doing this work of equity, is that they're so far along the continuum that they don't have much more work to do. And the reality is we're always working. We're always finding new spaces and places where we need to kind of reconsider things and find blind spots. And so I think it was a really great exercise that they did with Kathy to kind of go through those things and surface for themselves other areas that they'd like to explore for themselves, which was, I think, wonderful. I offered and looked for input for them about our structures of how we actually run our EDC meetings, time that we have, because these meetings take place after school, and then they work off into like little small groups on their own, but wanting to kind of change that structure and make sure that we are giving the time and due diligence for the tasks that they're asked to do, be more intentional about creating opportunity for them. A group of us, including EDC members, went to get trained for restorative practices, which I'll talk about again later. And then we went to the Ignite Change Conference, a large group of us. One thing that I will say that I really truly treasured is when we went to Ignite Change, we didn't just go as EDC members. We were able to go along with our superintendent, and McKernan also went with us, and we sat side by side as we listened to amazing keynote speakers. We had Gloria Latson-Billings and Joe Feldman, who spoke about, Joe Feldman talked about equity and grading, and really sparked a lot of interest within the group in having those conversations. And instead of it being like the telephone tree where you don't know what the leaders are thinking, the the leaders were around the table, and we were able to have really rich dialogue in that moment at that time, which I think, if I speak for the EDC members that were there, they really appreciated, and it lends a level of gravity, right, to the fact that you have your leader there with you, participating, hearing the same exact message. And Gloria Latson-Billings, she spoke about the 4 pandemics, as she called them. She talked about COVID-19. She talked about George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, and the racial reckoning. She highlighted that it wasn't just here in the United States. Like, it was one thing that she got was that, she was getting calls from all over the world where this racial reckoning was happening everywhere. In other countries, they were talking about how anti-Blackness is woven into their cultures as well. So it really, globalized it to make it a pandemic. The economic downturn, she talked about that and how we didn't all weather the storm of what happened, what's happened since COVID in the same way. And we know that the inequities that arise out of that. And then, of course, climate change, which not a surprise that we are all experiencing. I think warmer than normal weather. I refuse to do a garden this year because it's just not working out. Every time I try, it's either too rainy, too hot. These are real problems that we are dealing with. And I'm super excited about the youth because when I think about, when you look to solve these problems, you usually can't solve the problems with the same people who've created the problems, right? You need different lenses, and I think that we are working really hard to inspire and motivate and connect with our youth who we hope will honestly set a path for us that will help get us out of the mess that we've sort of gotten ourselves into. So as we talked about all the different highlights for EDC, we had some identified focus areas that we wanted to carry forward. We wanted additional professional development, which I would, of course, honor. Structure meeting times to work in collaboration with building leadership. This is a group that comes together. Some of our EDC members are building leaders. Kelly's back there, who come to the meetings, et cetera. But working in collaboration with building leadership so that we're not working in silos, but that we're connecting these units. And then opportunities to practice responsive techniques in real time. It's one thing to talk about how you handle things and kind of theoretically think of it, and there's a whole other thing about practicing. And when I work with people and I'm talking to people who are in moments and they're like, in that moment I couldn't say something and I feel really awful that I didn't stand up in that moment. What I've often had to tell people is, because they're like, oh, it seems to go so easy for you. And I said, well, yeah. It's easy for me because I've had to sit with that uncomfortable feeling of not responding in that moment. And it's such a yucky feeling that it prompts you to do it the next time. So if you didn't stand up this time, you are way more likely to stand up the next time because you don't want to revisit that feeling. And so, our leaders who are charged with helping and supporting their buildings and doing this work need extra time and practice with doing that so that when they need to be able to stand up and say something, they have the confidence, the skill, and the support to do so, which is what we hope for them. So I'm going to pass it on, because I've been talking for an awfully long time, to Shaena, who's going to talk about family and community engagement. And unfortunately, yeah, I'm like...
Thank you. In my current role as the Family and Community Engagement Coordinator, as well as my role in the last several years in district, it has been focusing on assessing and reassessing the current practices that are in place for family engagement as well as community partnerships. And this assessment has taken place in various methods, such as input surveys that we've provided at the beginning of the year for our EDC members and our One Community partners, as well as feedback surveys that we offer throughout the year after programming and service deliveries, as well as at the close of the year of One Community asking to assess what the work that we performed this year and getting their input of what we want to plan for our future meetings. This also takes place in school visits and connections with the school building leaders and staff, as well as student voices and community partners and parents within our community outreach and engagement. From that feedback that was provided from these various methods, we then use that to inform the work and the focus of this school year. And that was, as Theresa shared about professional development, has been a highlighted theme across the district of ways to enhance our services and work to improve the resources and things that staffs are able to provide to family. So with that, I was able to engage in paraprofessional training of TAs and paraprofessionals providing supports around family engagement, the importance of family engagement, and also with an emphasis emphasis on building trusting relationships with families. This was offered in the beginning of the school year, and hope to continue to be able to offer that to ongoing staff. Another area of focus for professional development was highlighted in the CIT that I helped to plan and collaborate with community providers in exploring town resources. That also continues to be a theme for the district of identifying the supports that are available in the community and being able to connect families to those resources. So with the CIT, I was able to bring together individuals from elementary, middle, and high school, as well as partner with community agencies to share about the resources that are available for our community and ways to access those resources. Also enhancing the staff's knowledge of what's available, but also being able to think about the ways to connect families to these resources and share these resources with them. It also created an opportunity for the teachers to partner with the community providers and share about the ways they can also help support the resources and partner with these agencies to support the community and our families. Another component of the work this year surrounded family outreach and community outreach and partnerships, and this was accomplished through tabling at events or sharing of resources of the Office of Equity Advancement and increasing the visibility of our new faces. I know we've been under some changes, but also highlighting the work that we're doing in district and getting feedback from families about what they want to see, as well as partnering with our current providers, so working along with the town social services, partnering with the University of Hartford for the Summer Place Youth Scholarships, as well as the Bloomfield Health District. So continuing those partnerships that have been established over the year while working to enhance and strengthen new partnership with new providers and agencies around locally. And lastly, another component of the work for this year was utilizing our already existing One Community for Equity members, which are comprised of our parent leaders and organizations and providers who work is centered around creating spaces of equity within the school and within our community. So utilizing that already established system to build upon the work that we are currently doing in district has been an important part of the work this year. The work for One Community mirrored the work that the district was and partnering but focused on belonging. So we engaged in a series of belonging where we focused on belonging in the community, belonging in the building, as well as belonging in the classroom, where we brought in community providers, we brought in building level leadership, as well as student voices across levels to share in the conversation about what belonging looks like and feels like for them and how we partner in that work, because we recognize that it is an individual work but also a collective effort to create spaces where we all feel like we belong and are seen and supported. A key component that was introduced in our One Community meeting was the student voices. So the feedback that we're giving from our community partners were making sure we have students at the table and that they're engaging in the conversation. We're talking about the changes we want to see for them. So we were able to have students come in, and that was a successful meeting, and we had great feedback about the opportunity to hear from their perspectives and have them a part of the conversation. And our goal is to continue that as we plan for our One Community meeting. As One Community is a space where everyone is welcome, so it's open to staff, it's open to faculty, it's open to leaders, community partners, and parents, and now students, where we can come together collectively to share information from the district side, as well as hear what the community members and organizations are doing and utilizing to where we can partner in the work, because we know that we can't do it separately. So thinking ahead and the groundwork and the things that have been set in place over the last several years and this year will continue to help us to build on what we were trying to do when it comes to family engagement next year, which is clearly defining what family engagement looks like for the district, identifying the protocols and steps that we are assuring that all families are able to access when we think about family engagement, while also thinking of the ways to bolster and increase family engagement, not just at the community events or school-wide events, but the small pockets of ways we can create spaces for engagement and looking at it through an equitable lens, right? We know that families are not always able to attend these events, but what are the ways we can create spaces where they can support their students in the way that is meaningful for them and meets them where they are at community-wise and family-wise. And that also is focusing on assessing the structures that are already in place, continuing to look at what we're doing for family engagement, and then also reflecting on the ever-changing communities that we have and the ever-changing populations that we have, and making sure that our family engagement meets those needs and addresses the ever-changing needs of the community and our families. I think that's it.
Good. Covered.
Sorry. Good evening, everybody. I'm Amy Yarbarough. I'm the Open Choice Family Engagement Liaison. And that picture you just saw was a ninth grade student playing a lead role at Hall's Fall Musical. And we just thought that was just a fabulous picture to show that presence and that just excitement and that, that beauty of our students who come to us who reside in Hartford. So some highlights about the things that we've done this year. Focus on family engagement activities. Last August, we held a welcome event at Albany Avenue Library. We invited all our new students and families to come, and we gave an overview of sort of what coming to West Hartford was like, and also connecting them with some parents and families who are already here in West Hartford, and also meeting some of the staff and the faculty, the staff and the administration who are at their buildings actually came in the summer and joined us in welcoming and answering questions and really making those connections, building those relationships, which were really important and leading us to that sense of belonging. For families who weren't able to participate in that specific event, we did follow-up home visits or community visits, and we then brought some of our materials with us and had that opportunity to, again, have a different kind of connection with families, which is really, really valuable. And then there were still some families who might not have been able to attend either of those, so we offered individual Google Meets where they could just ask personal questions or individual questions and sort of get those answered. And then we also offered just a drop-in opportunity here at Town Hall for families who, because of summer schedules, found it best and easiest to just come and sort of grab some of the materials we had. This was all in addition to the connection and the outreach and the welcoming that their individual schools have also provided for them. Some examples of our collaborative programs as we get into the school year, Bugbee did a Friendsgiving at Gather 55 in Hartford. It was a lovely evening where students who reside in Hartford welcomed their West Hartford friends and families. We shared wonderful food and had a great time there. Staff also was there, school staff was part of that celebration, and it was, again, another lovely way to create community. Norfelt, another example, Norfelt has a bingo night, which is very successful every year, and what we offered was food and transportation for families who it was beneficial to have access to that so that they could come and join the event and make it just facilitate that time getting to the school and being able to participate in the event. It was packed. People loved it. And we just finished our third annual Spring Family Festival. It's a district-wide event where students and their families invite their West Hartford friends and families to join on a Saturday event. Activities are led by schools and grades throughout the district, which is fabulous. The commitment and the participation from all our schools have been fabulous. We had administrators, we had teachers, and we had other staff members participate, as well as community organizations shared information that focused on young children all the way up to maybe some things that adults might need. We also had culturally diverse food, and it was delicious. This year, the event was also held at the South End Boys and Girls Club, which is a fabulous space. So if you haven't been there before, you should go check it out because it's awesome. And then in terms of sort of the rest of the ongoing communication that I'm able to provide is general outreach to families throughout the year. In the beginning of the year, for those who are returning, checking in, seeing that everybody's sort of set and ready to move forward. And then in the middle of the year, doing those middle year check-ins, and then at transition times where the 5th graders are getting all the information about moving on, as well as 8th graders, and then also throughout the year where seniors are getting all that information about schools and other career opportunities. And it's so it's just continuing to support the families in providing that information, passing that information along, and also making sure that our schools have it so folks don't miss it if they want it. And then I also respond to a whole host of other inquiries that families may have along the way. Access to information is an important aspect of engagement and connection. And I make sure that those resources offered by CREC also are shared with the students and the families. And those consist of personal family need resources, academic and enrichment resources, and college and career programs. Also being available to collaborate and consult with the school staff here in West Hartford to support their connection and their relationships with our families, students, and the CREC Open Choice staff is a really important component of the work that we do. So future areas of focus, as I stated, welcoming is a great way to start our relationship and our long-term commitment with the West Hartford Public School experience and developing those relationships. This year, we're welcoming 9th grade students who are new to the West Hartford Public Schools, and so we will support their needs and inquiries in tandem with the substantive transition programs that the high schools already have planned for them. And then we recognize that it's an appropriate time to conduct a needs assessment of the program and feedback from all of our stakeholders. And we look forward to the results of the assessments and how they will inform our future planning. And, okay, so Shaena and I had a great opportunity to partner within our office on this middle school leadership program. We were able to work with all 3 middle schools. We had students in 6th through 8th grade. We held 6 after-school sessions with approximately 12 to 20 students, depending on which school. We covered topics like leadership, effective and ineffective leadership. We talked about types of communication, perseverance and self-advocacy, courage and risk-taking, creativity and innovation using dialogue and video and small group work and art and games, and also included special guests. Our special guests consisted of school staff that the students themselves identified as people they saw as leaders in their schools. And we had high school club leaders come and participate in some of our sessions, and also National Arts Honor Society students.
We want to extend a thank you to the building leaders who are instrumental in being able to come into the school and work with these students and create the, provide the space and as well as the welcoming environment we needed to connect with the students. We also want to shout out Craig Diamond because he was a big part of being able to capture our student voices. He visited each of our schools and taped the students at Sedgwick, Bristol, and KP, and this is a compilation of some of our highlights of that moment that we wanted to share with you all.
This leadership group is kind of like a bunch of kids who care about the world around them, our school, and how we get people to feel included. And we all kind of come together to make moves that people sometimes don't have the courage to do.
This is a 6-week middle school leadership group. We were funded in part by the Open Choice program and able to provide this opportunity to all 3 of our middle schools.
We're the future, and if we don't know how to become leaders that can support our community, what will the future be like? This leadership group is amazing, strong, bold, able to speak their mind and able to get somewhere.
I feel like it helps me become a better person and help me be more responsible.
This leadership group is inspiring and helps you build onto who you are as a person.
What we've also been able to do in the course of this group is to bring in high school students coming in to talk to middle school students, and they've been able to find a real connection, sort of being able to answer those questions about what happens next, but also the older students able to give them some advice about, well, while you're in middle school, these are some of the things to think about, or don't be afraid to.
It really shows us opportunity, and I just see like, oh, I could do that in high school. That could be me. And I could be helping middle schoolers feel like they're important and they have something that they're worth. And I just feel like the high schoolers give us a different angle that maybe an adult couldn't. The high schooler gives us a view on things in our near future that we haven't yet experienced.
That's the meaningful part about it, just being able to bring people at different stages in their life and recognizing we're all having some of the similar challenges. It may look different based on where we are, but we're all trying to navigate this thing called life together.
I'm a better leader because I'm in this group.
You strengthen your confidence by doing this. You have to be able to speak up and let everyone know what your ideas are.
They really wanted to show us what a leader is, how a leader is.
They believe in us, we believe in them. We can trust each other. The world needs leaders, we can be leaders. Everyone can be if they try.
I really enjoyed this group and had a good time.
It's important so that we influence other students in our school and help make school a better place. Before this, I was barely raising my hand, barely participating, but after this, I'm just participating a lot more.
It makes you a better person, teaches you how to be a leader. There's nothing like the feeling where you like accomplish something and are super proud of yourself.
So of course, we can't have a conversation about equity without bringing children into the fold, because again, we do all this in service of our children. And I personally just want to thank both Amy and Shaena for their time and their dedication for this program. It meant a lot to the youth that were there. And to be honest with you, kind of helped also guide our path for what we're looking for as we move forward. Student voice and being able to get feedback and being able to have feedback loops featured high as I went through the year and had conversations with both students, staff, and community members. And for me, this is like a perfect example of when you're offering a service and a skill set and a space and place for kids to feel like they can belong and they can lead in that belonging. This is kind of like the magic that happens. So thank you both for that. It was phenomenal. 18 weeks of hard work that both put in for that. So thank you. Oops, that's not gonna, we're not gonna do that again. Honestly, technology and me are not friends. Thank you. So, you know, as I went through the year, I got a lot of key feedback and tried to gather feedback from you know, each group that we work closely in connection with. And so EDC really wanted an opportunity actually to work with, they mentioned Equity Squad, but really in all honesty, it's more really what they're looking for is to be able to connect the work that they're doing with the work that the students would like to do. Additional PD, stronger ties to building leaders, and ongoing subgroup work, which we've worked to identify some of the areas that we'd like to focus on. For one community, we talked about our partners wanted to, again, we're highly interested and highly, you know, we do this for students, and I think so many times we think we know what the right thing to do for them is without asking. And so I think it kind of we all kind of had that moment of realization as we planned this out that we really wanted to make sure that we were incorporating their thoughts, not just their thoughts, but engaging them and enlisting them in the process. So one community also really, as Shaena highlighted earlier, really wanted to continue to hear more student voice and partner with student voices. They also wanted more, they wanted to keep up to date with district practices and how we do things, and then information around continued efforts to ensure success for all students. You know, I'm sure you're going to get a presentation later that talks about data, right, and looks at the subgroups of data and takes those pieces apart. We're all very, very aware that you know, equity demands that we individualize what we're doing and that we know each student and each learner, and that we are providing a path for each and every student. And so our one community partners are very conscious of this and also want to partner with us and how they can support and help us with that. And for open choice, we, as Amy said, we're really, we took the staff perspective on what we're looking for, because we do need to do that needs assessment to be hearing, again, directly from, if we're looking to provide service and we're looking to provide pathways in, what is exactly that we're people would need or want from us. And again, we don't want to assume anything. We want to ask the questions, we want to listen, we want to hear. And then how to improve the two-way communication. I have to say, I engaged in listening circles and joining West Hartford. And if you haven't gotten to know me well, you should know that listening and just having to listen without being able to respond back is kind of hard for me. But in doing so, in being able to listen and to be able to just hear, and for those of you who don't know, listening circles are part of restorative practices. It's a practice where you have a topic that you're going to discuss, and you allow people gather understanding and knowing what the topic is. You set some norms in place as to what you're going to be talking about. And rules of engagement are, you're in this circle, people are sharing, and as you share, you're not adding on to what somebody else said, but you're putting your own voice in, so that because what happens is if one person says something and then all of a sudden you kind of connect onto what they said, and then it ends up being kind of like a conversation versus then an opportunity to hear from everyone. And it was a challenge. I did it with students, I did it with staff. It's a real challenge for people to literally just listen, and then still when it's your turn to speak, that you just add your perspective on whatever the question that's being asked. But in doing so, and in challenging myself to make sure I stayed in the listener role, I got to hear, first of all, just when it came to our students, how amazing and insightful they are, and how observant they are. I think more so than as adults, I think we give them credit for. They know, right? They know if they feel like, somebody doesn't like them, or somebody's being treated differently. They know, they're aware. They're very, very, very clear at being able to express that. I did listening circles on my own, but I also got to do listening circles with seniors, with Superintendent Vicinas, which, they're deliberately, seniors are chosen because, you got nothing to lose. You're walking out the door, no holds barred, whatever you like to say. And overall, the students were super complimentary of their educational experience, but they didn't hold back on our shortfalls. And I, for one, appreciated that, because we don't grow unless we know. And so we have feedback, and so our obligation then is to kind of make a plan that honors that feedback. Did I go the wrong way? No. Oh, good, okay. Did I go the wrong way? So we've identified 3 areas that we really are going to shed extra focus on. Not that we're not putting anything down. We're just really going to kind of be laser light in a few areas. Culture and climate, affinity spaces really rose to the top. Some of the feedback from affinity spaces were that there's a lot of talk, but then it's like, well, then what's the action? And people kind of get stuck in that loop of what next. And we want to be able to help and support our affinity spaces, whether it be students, staff, or some of our parent groups as well. How do we continue to move forward, and how do we continue to hold each other up as we do this work? Continued work, of course, with human resources. Julie and I are attached at the hip when it comes to our IED plan, our Increasing Educated Diversity plan. So we'll continue to do that work, because we know how important it is for students to have the windows and mirrors into different, the diverse backgrounds of our students. Professional development, we will continue our work as we're at our infancy of creating cultures of belonging through restorative practices. Revisiting microaggressions and bias, because that, when it came to student focus groups, came up as something that was, again, like I said, they're super observant, and so we will continue to do that work. I'm honoring the new structure for EDC that will have additional learning opportunities, and then feedback, again, listening circles. How do we make it the norm of our practice to be in spaces just to hear and be in community, with our students, with our families, with our staff, to help support them. And then, of course, ensuring access for all parents for all, which, Shaena does one piece of our ensuring access for parent and community engagement, but we do understand that there is a multilingual component that we must honor. And so I'm actually happy to say that we'll be adding to our family with a multifamily homeschool liaison, which is a new position. Don't freak out. I didn't. Amanda will be joining our team and working with us in part, and obviously keeping her roles with Smith and Charter Oak as well. But we understand that families need to have access, and access isn't just about, language is another form of access that we definitely need to be looking at as globally as a district, and making sure that we ensure that families have access to all the information, that language doesn't become a barrier. So I think I've run through everything. I'm scared to ask if you have questions, but we're going to dive right in because that's what it demands. So I'll turn it back over.
All right. Well, thank you very much, and quite timely for the lights to come on in the back as well. Thank you for rich information. So yes, teammates, questions or comments regarding what has been shared? LaToya.
Mine is comments, so you can breathe easy. Thank you so much for this presentation and the work that your office has been doing. Shaena, just can't even want to lift you up so much, and your commitment to the community and the work that you've been doing. My daughter got to go through the middle school leadership program, and just the way that y'all made sure that she had access to that. She was also doing the school musical. There was a lot of stress around that, and that space took the load off. And I needed that as a parent, and she needed that. So thank you for making sure that she had equal access to being a part of that program, and it was really impactful for her. And I also wanted to just also uplift the commitment to restorative practices that you've all taken on. I know that it's hard work, and it doesn't change things overnight. And really want to lift up West Hartford Public Schools in general for that partnership with SBDI and taking on that training. I'm one of the 2 consultants that does that training around the state. Obviously, I can't do it in West Hartford because I'm on the board, but it's really important that y'all are walking the walk with it. I love to see it, and just want to lift that up because I know it's hard work. People hear restorative practices and they're like, oh no, it's like a lack of accountability, but actually it's more accountability because not only do you receive consequences, but you actually have to face the people that you harm and work towards repairing that harm. And so when you got to face the people that you hurt, you think twice before you hurt them, right? And so I just want to commend your team on the commitment to that work and everything that you all have done this year. So thank you so much.
Other questions or comments? Gail.
So I'm going to ask a question. So one of my questions is, thank you for the presentation, is I'm curious how you, and I probably asked this in a different forum, in a different meeting, but I still feel I would like to get a better understanding of how you measure success here. And, just to add to that is in most of the things that our kids are going to school and learning, we have ways to measure that success. And given, that we've had numerous incidents this year in the schools, both anti-Semitic, anti-Black, I'm curious, how you end up measuring that you are actually, changing that.
Yeah, measurement when it comes to equity work is always like this thing, right? Because you want to be able to quantify. The reality is what we measure is a sense of belongingness, right? And so we have survey data that talks about sense of belonging. It is in some ways very qualitative. I will be honest, I am a student of my general philosophy is if we are truly giving kids everything that they need, then we should start to see gaps close. I want equal outcomes for our students. Equity is the path to equal outcomes for our students. And so ultimately, it's why this office partners with all the other offices, right? Like, so we partner with, Dr. Morrow, and when it comes to operations, when we think about discipline data, we partner with curriculum, again, looking at assessments. We partner with our, with HR, right, for our hiring and diversity in hiring. It's a complex. I'd love to give you like a quick answer, but the reality is that this work is qualitative, and what I've told to students, my promise to students, is my commitment that we don't get to pat ourselves on the back until who we serve allows us and tells us that, yep, that I went through the schools and I haven't had these experiences, and I've been able to show up as my authentic self and be accepted for who I am, as well as our staff. And so, we have measures that we use to kind of to look at that, right? If we think about staff satisfaction, sense of belonging, we did an actual sense of belonging survey, just for that purpose to kind of give us some baseline data. So I am cognizant of the fact that numbers are something that everybody always looks for, but what I can tell you is that when our work is in sync and we're all moving in the right direction, you won't be able to miss it. I've experienced it as a leader. You won't be able to miss the difference. And then people are like, oh, what do you do? What do you do? And I'm like, well, we really focused heavily on a culture of belonging, because when you belong, you can risk failure. You're not afraid to try things out. You're not afraid to fail because it's a step forward, right? And so until we get those, it's kind of like lag indicators, right? And so until we can get you can see the rest of that. What we have is the qualitative data that does talk about how students are feeling. That's why those listening circles and the affinity spaces are so necessary, because that's how we're going to know that if things are getting better, right? How people are responding. I also wanted to comment on, you're right. We've had incidents, right, this year, and I've had lots of conversation with families, with groups. And what I continue to remind people is we're going to continue to have them, and I'll tell you why. It's as a school we're not teaching this. We are actually doing everything in our power to teach acceptance, to teach belonging, to teach that hate has no home here. But our children don't live in our schools. They have to leave. They're in the outside world, and they are exposed to everything that we as adults are exposed to, with lovely devices that give them second by second access. And so as we communicate openly with our community that these things are happening, it's two things. It's transparency, and it's a plea for call of action. We partner with families on changing what's happening in our schools, and we need everyone to know. Like, if you don't know that you're being called to a fight, then how do you know to show up for it? We need to fight for the future and the success for our students, and so we are deliberately being super transparent, because we deliberately want families to know that we want you to have these conversations at home. It's why when we send you the notifications, we also send you some resources so that you can click in, find ways to talk if you're not comfortable talking about it. You can call any of your schools, and they're happy to help you and support you with how you can talk to your students about your child about hate and bias incidents. We've spent a lot of time this year as leaders learning about subtle signs of anti-Semitism, signs of anti-Blackness, signs of discrimination in all its forms, because we have to be able to recognize it in order to be able to address it. And then we have to have the skills, the fortitude, and the moral imperative to do so, right, as leaders. And that's a muscle that you have to flex. It's not like, I don't think anybody's born excited to combat racism or anti-Semitism or any other form of discrimination and hate. It's something that you have to practice doing, and but it is our professional responsibility. It's our moral responsibility, and it's something that in West Hartford we are proud to say that we lean into. But again, we're really working on building that partnership with families, building that partnership with our community, so that we are all standing against hate and bias. Because it's not, I often had conversations with my staff as a principal, And, it'd be like the pointing of the fingers of who's, oh, it's the parents, oh, and I was like, no. They're with us for X number of hours, and while they're ours, and we have to kind of do our part. And in the same vein, when I talk to families, they're with us for 7 hours, and there's X number of hours that they're not with us, and we all have to do our part. Judging each other doesn't help us, but wrapping each other, holding each other up in the work and in our values is really going to be how we have to get through this. So we are partnering with the town side and been partnering with Adrian on the town side and with our community faith-based leaders as well, so that we can be collectively having this conversation, because we may not be able to solve the problem for the world, but if we can solve it and create a better and safer space in West Hartford, then I think that we owe that to our students to work on doing that and to do the best that we can. But yeah, it's unfortunate that the current climate does not lend itself to discourse and hearing each other and being willing to have differences of opinion, right? But we will do our part to teach those skills and to reinforce those skills. And as LaToya mentioned, the restorative practices doesn't mean that we're not giving consequences. It means that, what is a real consequence? I can send you home and you can play on video games all day, or you can, you may have to go home. But when you come back, you're going to have to look at somebody who you care about, if we've done our job right about creating a space of belonging, and say, yeah, I did something that caused harm, and have that human moment, right? Which is I think it's what we look for our children. It's what we look for with our adults, because if you don't want something to repeat itself, learning has to happen. Discipline is still primarily about teaching and learning, and we are an institution of teaching and learning. And so even if a child has done something wrong, we don't get to throw them off the island. They're ours. We own them, we love them. And so we have to give them a path back in. And so that's really the work that we are collectively in charge of doing. Sorry, that was a roundabout way of answering your question. No problem.
Shannon. That was a great segue, because I'm trying to pull all the pieces together. But first of all, Kathy Taylor, fantastic. Very excited that you're working with her. But in terms of the scaling of something like this, I think where I worry a bit is when I see like the students who are participating or the EDC. It's probably, I'm making some assumptions, an audience of individuals who've already done the work and are already committed to it. And it's reaching those who maybe are a little more skeptical or just haven't had the exposure. And I'm thinking of how are students selected for a program like that? Because I'm thinking about that as something that would be valuable for every student as a push into, as advisory, just to kind of create that common empathy and understanding, and then like vocabulary, language, in a place where, to your point, you can apply the learning in a place where you will not be judged for doing it in an awkward way. I mean, I think adults and kids alike, like, this is hard, and the first time you encounter, I've had it happen where someone says something and I skip a beat and I don't even realize what they just said, and then I process it and I'm like, but then the conversation's moved on, and then it's like, do I go back to it? Does it make it worse if I draw attention to it? And it's almost like you just need that application of practice as much as possible. So like a train the trainer model that then pushes in to reach as many people as possible. And I know that's all easier said than done, but just kind of curious how you're thinking about the scaling.
Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head, because that's really the challenge, is really kind of making sure that you have those opportunities. For students, as always, I'm sure Liam can tell you, like, it's like kind of like for some of the work with the students, like when it comes to affinity spaces, et cetera, it's self-selected because so many of our students are heavily involved in different things. But we've talked about and we've looked at different structures that we already have in place, right? We have community, we have these different vehicles for this, and we are looking at, do we need to revamp? Do we need to massage this? Do we need to approach it in a different way? Do we need to help students to do that work? And you're right, when it comes to staff. So I'm a structure person, and so I like structures that help kind of make things happen. And I also like to give the benefit of the doubt of maybe you're not aware. So like everything's approached through in case you weren't aware, right? Or let me give you some really concrete examples of how you can create a culture of belonging. So like our PLEC is working on that. They're working on creating videos for that. So this year we kind of identified what the areas were that we wanted to target, and they created a rough draft of what the information they wanted, and then we're going to actually have some, again, assured experiences that we want students to have, and so assured practices. The thing about teaching that I think is so unique, and why I'm in love with this field in general, is that you can craft it and make it your own, right? So I want to give people a foundation, but I want them to also bring their own individual self to it, right? Like, you know, there's when you talk about creating a culture of belonging, it has to be authentic. Like you have to connect to it in some way, shape, or form. But you do that best by having those experiences yourself. So we're going to push for next year at staff meetings, giving people opportunities to practice some of these things, because that's like I said, it's like a muscle. You have to work it out. Like there's no quick pill that you can take where you just magically do it. You just have to kind of slog through that. And what we are going to ask is that the general and wider public be patient, because one element of supremacy is this perfect, right? So if people feel like it has to be perfect, then you don't try. And the reality is that we have to allow people to stumble and not be perfect while they work through getting better at something. And we tell that to kids all the time, right? We allow them, oh yeah, just try and it's okay, blah, blah. But then it comes to adults and I'm like, maybe not. But we do have to, acknowledge the efforts that people are making and understand that there is a learning curve to this work, and there's a learning curve to courageous conversations, and that's okay. Children, what I've heard from children is, I don't care if they get it wrong, I care that they tried. And I was like, can I tape you saying that so I can play it back for the adults? Because I think that it means a lot, right? If you intervene or you intercede in something that you feel like isn't, appropriate or going to create a space of belonging, if you've tried, even if it isn't perfect, it was noticed, it was noted, and it was appreciated. And so that's kind of like the, educators, I'll claim it for myself as well. We tend to be a little type A when it comes to things. It's like whatever it is, that's what calls us into this profession, weirdly. But that's the kind of thing that we have to shed, right? We have to get better, which means you're going to have to work at it. Thank you.
Jason.
Thank you for that presentation. There's two pieces of messaging that I don't want to get lost in there, because I think they're really, really important. The first one is the topic you were just talking about, is that, and I think for all of the adults, is we're all people in progress. And I think that's really key to, engaging in these conversations. The second one is the idea around the incidents that have happened in the schools, right? So be they anti-Semitism or other instances of racism. I think it's important to acknowledge, we tend to focus, and I think the coverage tends to be, these are solely school problems, right? This is a hall problem, or it's a Conard problem. What are we going to do about it? And I think your message that this is a broader community problem, right? It's a family problem, it's a community problem, it's a state problem, national problem, global problem. And we're one piece of that. But I think that message tends to get lost, because I think people do rightly ask, what are we going to do in the schools? How do we address it? You've spoken very eloquently about that tonight. I think one of the things that does get lost is this is not, a West Hartford district problem. This is not an individual school problem. We're part of the solution, but it's really a symptom of what's going on in our broader communities. And so I thank you for that, and I hope as you message that forward that doesn't get lost.
Thank you for that. I have to tell you, I'm a part of a group of DEI directors from across the state. We seem to just get a lot of the press, but nothing that has happened here is unique to West Hartford, and everyone is seeing a rise in these activities. And what I'd like to say is, if we're a district that prides ourselves on leading, then let's lead by being honest about what's happening, and let's lead by having a call to action for change, instead of, wiping our brow and saying, whew, news didn't pick that up. Like, I'd rather be in the front of it, and I'd rather be having the conversation. I'd rather be leading, and that's why I'm extremely excited that you've matched your promise of the community that you said you were when I came. So I'm honored, again, to be here. Thank you.
Other questions or Latoya?
Just one more comment, just thinking about going back to kind of thinking about how we are on the prevention side of things. One of the great things I wanted to share too, just back to the SBDI, is that this up and coming year, we're expanding into elementary schools so that when the kids come into middle school and high school, they already have a foundation of those restorative practice skills, thinking about culture of belonging. And so really just trying to send kids in middle school and high school to make it a little bit easier, because we're realizing we need to meet kids sooner, faster, earlier. And then the other thing I was thinking about too was, these outside influences. And so I just want to kind of throw this out there. You probably have already thought about it, but one of the things that I did, it was a digital footprint class. We had some digital footprint-based curriculum, and all in 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders got it. And it was all about, being socially responsible with your social media, your phone, and just kind of like setting that foundation for the identity that you create there, and also that it's one that will follow you for the rest of your life, and then even the legal ramifications too. And those were all things that students weren't aware of, and even parents weren't aware of, because I drew a hard line in my school. I said no phones. And so when parents were really upset about it, I said, well, let's talk about what happens when, a child does this with their phone and what could happen legally. And I think with that education and that awareness, it helped folks be a little bit more responsible. So just wanted to put it out there. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd also say that modeling is such an important thing, right? I'm getting the look from Paul.
No, I wanted to piggyback.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
modeling is such an important thing as well, right? Like our behavior on devices, our how we engage when we are online. One thing I've definitely learned is that kids will absolutely follow what you do more than what you say, right? The mind is just an amazing thing, and so being mindful of that as well. And I had this large conversation about phones earlier, and one of the challenges that popped up was, what are the behaviors that you allow your child to use at home with their phones? And the school system in general, like we don't want to be the boogeyman for your child, right? We don't want to be like, it's kind of like when people say, oh, if you do something bad, I'm going to call the police. The police don't want to be your boogeyman. They want to keep you safe. They want to protect you. In our schools, we don't want to be the boogeyman for your children. Like we are happy to partner with conversations about phone usage, but again, it's a partnership. What are you allowing at home? Because that's a hard ask to say, we're going to do this, but at home it's like free for all, right? Like, so all of these conversations, right? For me, we're all connected and we all own our part of the work. But I'm always happy to engage in any of the conversation, as Superintendent Vicina knows.
And just to add, because I'm extremely proud, and a big shout out to our library media specialists in the curriculum, especially, they begin at the elementary level with digital footprints, digital citizenship, and it carries throughout. We have connection points with that within advisory and I believe within community. But I know as recently as this year, I was invited by our school counseling department. We do an event each year for I believe it's for the junior class, where we'll get a school-wide assembly and we talk about the college interview process. But one of the first things we talk about in any interview process is their digital footprint. And we give them real-world, updated, very recent examples of kind of what not to do, and having that hard look at your own digital footprint, and the idea that it is out there, and that schools look at it, employers look at it, and it's easy to find a lot of stories that all of a sudden kids at that age can really take notice of and say, ooh, let me go back and look at myself. So it's very much a part. Your point is extremely well taken. It's a very important lesson, and something that we need to continue to do, continue to reinforce, continue to refresh, continue to deepen. So thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right. I just want to say that I echo all that has been shared. Thank you very much for what each of you do. And I share in the sense of pride, Theresa, that you made reference to for this district. And not only for the good, but for when there is a not so good, how we address it and call it out. And have had moments of acknowledging that when speaking proudly about our district, have been clear in saying we are not perfect. We've never claimed to be perfect. But when we experience challenges, we will address them accordingly. As you said, if you don't know, you don't grow. And I echo very much what my colleague Jason summarized, who summarized quite well how we are a microcosm of a macro problem. So thank you for helping us to raise young people to be leaders who can help lead us in the right path. Thank you so very much for all that you're doing. And as we transition, we will now prepare for our district profile and performance report. And as the team comes to the table, we'll pass to Superintendent Vicines, who will pass the baton.
Excellent. So the remainder of the executive team will be joining us here. And the District Profile and Performance Report, or PPR as it's known, is a state, it's a state-generated report that really is, for better or worse descriptor, a district report card in a sense. It reports out on a significant number of indicators and for which we have everyone assembled here because each of them has responsibility over parts of it. There are many, many indicators within the PPR that have been previously reported to you as a board. We'll hit some of the highlights, but all of our state testing results live within the PPR. A significant amount of information about our special education programming. We've recently been treated to a report on a lot of that in much greater detail, but there's some summary data there in the PPR. And historically, we've had a school safety and climate report that Andy and typically the two, if not the two high school principals, at least some of the secondary principals would come and share. And a lot of that information was duplicative of information that was found in the PPR. So we made the conscious decision to kind of join those. So we will, there's a dramatic amount that you can read in this report. I know they'll reference where it's available to the public online. But I will turn it over to the team to walk you through the different highlights and talk about the trends. And this data, just to mention, I know Ann or some of the team will mention, it is the 22-23 profile and performance report because that's the data that's most recently published by the state of Connecticut. But we continue to give you timely reports as new data becomes available.
Thank you for that introduction. So I can just skip ahead because Paul did a great job of bringing us forward. Tonight, we have the team ready to talk to you about some of the data in the PPR that we receive, and we're happy to go over with you. The profile and performance report were developed in accordance with a Connecticut general statute, and each year the CSDE produces these annual reports for public school districts. The purpose really, of course, is to identify and promote improved educational practices. We want to use the report to inform our stakeholders of the condition of education, to highlight the successes and identify some areas for improvement. Certainly, we want to establish the support of all of our stakeholders in making changes that are needed, and we want to inform policy decisions. So we review this report thoroughly, and we're here to give you an overview. Thank you. There are several indicators in the report. They fall into some broad categories, so we'll be talking about some student data indicators, educator data indicators. Melissa will review the pupil services data, and we have a variety of performance and accountability data that we'll go over tonight. So the first set, and I'll do this slide with my good friend Julio Duarte here, but we are seeing an increased diversity in our students of color over the last 5 years. We increased our diversity approximately 2.4%. And Julio always works on the educator piece.
Sure. If you recall, I sat here with Theresa a few months ago, and we presented our Increasing Educator Diversity Plan. We haven't heard back from the state yet, but we're assuming it'll come soon, and feel very confident again in our efforts with that. But I think, what we really want to take a look at, if you want to just simplify it, is that our goal is to really have a staff that's reflective of our student population. And so the truth is, we still have ways to go to have that be a nice, complete mirror, but we certainly continue to see and make strides in that effort, and really focusing on, the various components, which one would start with just the hiring and selection, right? And we're in that process right now for many of our positions, and really just focusing and making sure that we're looking at all of our applicants and looking at the whole picture there, but also then how we're recruiting folks, and really the ability for myself, and I've brought Theresa on many road trips to the various universities and the career fairs, and really anyone that'll let us in the door to talk about just who we are and to really what we are all about. And then, one of the pieces that we really want to focus too is on retention. And so it's important and great that we can certainly recruit and hire a diverse staff, but and really for all staff, but we also want to make sure that we're able to retain them, and some of the various things and efforts that we continue to do and to look at those pieces. But again, as you know, as our efforts continue to push and to move in that direction, and like I said, we've made some steady gains, but certainly have a ways to go, and really want to make sure that we sustain the effort and the momentum that we've started and want to continue to create.
Thank you. One of the highlights of the report that I'm very excited about is that we had seen, as the whole state did, an enormous increase in chronic absenteeism during and then after COVID. And some of that was because we would encourage people to stay home if they didn't feel well, and that those numbers rocketed across the state, and they were at levels we had never seen before after the pandemic. But they are coming down, which is good for all students, and in students of color categories where they had skyrocketed even higher. And so we watch those metrics really carefully. I'm glad to see we are down significantly, and I believe we will continue to do that. We have put an effort this year on messaging, that that the guidance has certainly changed on coming to school if you're not feeling 100%, and it's kind of gone back to a pre-pandemic guidance, and so these numbers are coming down. I was excited to see that in this report. I'll turn over to Andy.
Thanks, Ann. One of the things we also take a look at from a state level is the suspension rates of students. And we track that really looking at a 5-year trend. And so our trend continues to drop over the 5 years, but more importantly, and if you would switch to the next. More importantly, we're proud of the fact that we're seeing our focus on culture and relations lead to a significant drop in every category that the state tracks. And one of the focuses we've had over the past 5 years specifically is to reduce the disproportionality amongst our different groups and suspension rates. And so you'll see that we've significantly lowered across the board, and the district over the 5-year rate has gone from a 4.2% to a 3.2% overall student rate over the last 5 years. And a large part of this is due to the climate work that we're doing with students and that our school-based teams are doing as well. In addition to that, we maintain our alternative programs and supports. We have our Reach and Strive programs for high school students. We have our AEP program for students that are struggling to meet some of the behavior expectations of a regular classroom. And we continue our close partnership with the West Hartford Police Department and the state level for our law enforcement as well, to make sure that our schools are safe and that our communities are functioning to the best of their ability. One of the things that Melissa will talk a little bit about as well is some of the proactive risk assessments that we've been doing from a mental health standpoint, of making sure that when a student is struggling, that we have the right people looking at really a 360 view of a student and their behavior before we're comfortable putting them back into a situation that may not have been resolved for the student. And so our proactive risk team has been put in place and is operating, I think, very well with that. Finally, the last portion is we need to report out to you the expulsions. In 2001 and 2002, we had 2 student expulsions. Last year, we had 3, and this year there is 1 student expulsion.
All right. So just a friendly reminder, in the performance report, this data is from 2022, 2023, and so I've had the opportunity to sit at the board table and give you more current information. So the report and information I'm providing you today is dating back to the time period of which this data was reported. And so as you know, we do have a growing trend in special education. So at the time of this report, we were seeing about a 4.5% increase in the prevalence rate in special education as we did a 5-year look back. And that was a percentage rate of 17%, which was just above the state average at the time of 16.7% prevalence rate for students with disabilities. We calculate placements in other schools, private schools and other placements. And just a reminder, that includes both special education, approved special education schools, but also under IDEA, we are responsible for students who are placed in private and parochial schools, of which IDEA covers. So this number is inclusive of that, and that percentage went from the previous year of 13.4% to 13.8%. So we did see a relative increase there. And again, that's just inclusive of special education placements and placements of students who are not in special education placements, but might be in private or public schools that we are responsible for their IDEA child find obligations. When we look at the breakdown across the federal disability categories, one of the areas that we see an increase while all rates are relatively stable across disability categories is the area of specific learning disabilities. That is our largest area of disability in the town of West Hartford, which is similar to state and federal trends that we see in special education as well. Unique to Connecticut, though, is that Connecticut is one of the only states in the union that recognizes specific learning disabilities / dyslexia. So in other states, students who are found to have dyslexia would be under the eligibility category of just specific learning disability. So Connecticut's, the change in the rates that we're seeing are consistent amongst other towns in specific learning disabilities, and really tracks back to the change in legislation in 2015 when we added specific learning disabilities / dyslexia as one of our categories. And so this data is actually all encompassing of both those 2 categories of students who might be eligible under a specific learning disability and students who are eligible under specific learning disabilities / dyslexia. So I do attribute some of the growth in that area to that legislation and our child find obligations, which I think is really at the forefront of special education work that we do, because then we're better able to remediate, because there's great research around dyslexia recovery and programming, and West Hartford has been a leader in that way. And other health impairment is another area we've seen a little bit more of an increase, going from 3.1% to 3.3%. Again, not a huge increase, but it is a change in the trends that we've seen over time for other health impairment. Other health impairment is a category that can be encompassing of ADHD, and it can also be encompassing of mental health components such as anxiety or depression if a child's not found eligible under an emotional disability. And so that's just important to know as we look at our climate and the information I provided to you at previous board reports about what we know about students' mental health. We do attribute some of that growth to that as well. One of the metrics that we measure as a department and as the state level is time with non-disabled peers, which is truly the time that students with disabilities spend with their non-disabled peers. And so I'm happy to report that more than 2/3 of our students spend 80% or more of their day with non-disabled peers and in their least restricted environment. And so what we know, and you've heard, conversations through, Theresa's presentation and Ann's presentations about equity and access for our students, we are still looking at how we include our students with disabilities. And that's a conversation that we have as a PPT team at every single annual review PPT meeting. And we ask that question, how can we meaningfully include our students, and what new ways can we challenge them so that they can be with their non-disabled peers, because the research really shows that students grow as they are included in a very meaningful way. So we're very happy to share that information as well. And as Andy mentioned, we do continue to look at some of the trends that we have in district. And so one of the larger lifts this year was looking at our crisis intervention planning and our risk assessment teams and our suicide prevention manuals and processes. And there's been some recent legislation around that and some great support from the state. And so we have mobilized around some changes to our processes, and the state had identified the Columbia Lighthouse model as the suicide risk assessment evaluation. And we've recently also trained our staff on CSTAG, which is an acronym for a type of proactive risk assessment that is very student friendly and is able to help us better understand when a student makes a threat to the others in the community, whether it's to a school or to another peer. We're able to assess that risk in real time with really trained staff and document that, and it really helps us outline what support services the student needs and how we can better support them in the school setting.
I'm going to move our discussion to, oh, sorry, thank you. I'm going to move over our discussion to college and career readiness, and two of the charts or two of the pages that can help you here. One is on page 2 and one is on page 5. But this particular metric is really interesting, and the axis refers to students who are enrolled in AP courses, CTE courses, workplace experience, or dual credit courses. It also would include IB, but we don't have the IB program. And 86.5% of our juniors are enrolled in these courses, and 98.2% of our seniors. So I think when you couple that with what Melissa just said about access for our special ed population, which is approximately 18%, you can see that they are getting great access to college and career ready courses, which I think is, really amazing. At the 12th grade level, we're about 4 points higher than the state is at that level, which I think is amazing. And then the achievement indicator in this particular area would say that students who are meeting the SAT benchmark as determined by the SAT, which is certain scores of 480 on the English and 530 on the math, students who have received a 3 or higher on an AP test, and those are the, or if students take the ACT, students still sometimes take the Saturday ACT if they meet a benchmark score as well. So with that being said, 65.8% of our students are receiving, are getting recognized for achievement in these college and career readiness courses. So we're well represented in this category and very proud of it. Moving on, in our performance indicator, the state has the state publishes something known as the District Performance Index. It's a metric the state uses as an average of student performance in a subject area on the summative assessments that are given in math, English, and in science. The DEPI goes from a 0 to a 100 with the target as a 75. And in ELA this year, or I'm sorry, a previous year, our aggregate score on this was a 72.4. In math, it was a 69.4, and in science, a 71.4. So we are very close to that state benchmark of 75. We have seen a little bit of a decrease in the trend in the last 3 years in ELA, and somewhat flat in math. Science had a new test about 5 years ago, so I didn't include that because it was the first year of a brand new design test, so I don't think it's appropriate to go back and look at that first year test score. Our high needs group has had some lower performance through the pandemic and coming out of it, but I believe we have, and we continue to look at those. They've been well stated as areas of focus and how to work with our high needs students to support their achievement in all of these areas. Similarly, the non-high needs group has had some dips as well in performance, although they had a slight increase in mathematics performance. If we move on, another area the state really, the state emphasizes in this report is the growth indicator, and that is found on page, sorry, I didn't reference that previous page. That indicator is found on page 6. And so it's not only just performance that you want to examine, you want to look at the growth of children over time. So not just how did these year's third graders do versus last year's third graders, but how did this group do in third grade and fourth grade, the same children. So in this particular area, the students, to grow at around the 60th percentile is very strong, is strong growth. And we had, as a district, 60.4 for ELA and 68.7 for math. I'm going to point out the math because that was a real significant increase, one of the biggest increases I've seen over these years. And there has been a focus on growth in math in our district for the last, I don't know, Paul, 5 years, 6 years? I think about 6 years ago, we named math as an area of focus, and we are seeing some good growth in that area, and I'm very pleased with it. Our ELA has been flat to a little bit down in the last 5 years, and we will continue to look at what other steps we need to take to improve in that area. We do still exceed the state averages in growth, which is nice to see in math very significantly. And we share this data with all of our department supervisors and teachers so that they understand how we are doing. It's not just performance that's important, but children need to grow over time. The last major category I'll point to today is graduation, and these are a couple metrics on graduation, and they are found on page 5. The cohort graduation rate is for the reported year is 93.5%, and a very strong indicator. We have, it's not our highest in the last 5 years. I think we have been as high as 95, but it is a strong performance. We have seen this particular reporting year, we saw a dip in our 6-year graduation cohort, and that is for our high needs students. So this particular metric looks at our high needs students who stay in our program for more than, they're not expected to have a graduation within the 4-year period, the typical 4-year period. And that metric did take a slight dip of almost 2%. Other metrics that I don't report in the big box, but I will speak to, is one of the metrics on track for graduation. That is an interesting one. That looks at 9th grade students who earn 5 credits in 9th grade. Recently, the state has increased graduation credits to 25. So it's important to see where they are in 9th grade to see if they are on track for graduation. And that metric we look at very carefully. It is currently, oh, I'm sorry, don't have it right in front of me. I will find it in a second. Page 8, thank you. 6. There you go. On track for graduation is 86.5%. This metric is something I continue to look at. It has fallen a little bit in the last few years, and we are concerned. Our 9th graders coming in earning 5 credits in that first year is very important to be on track to gain the 25 by 12th grade. We've also had very good, strong persistence in college entrance and college persistence. So college entrance, the percent of students who enter college the fall after their senior year, and college persistence, which is a really great metric to look at too, is those students who stay on and enter again in the year following, so as sophomores, so to speak. And that's a quite important metric as well. There are some other important metrics that we look at. Our arts access is approximately 40%, and the way that metric is looked at is what percent of your high school students are enrolled in an arts class in any one given year. So 40% of our students are taking art in any one given year, which you know, I'm pleased with, given we have comprehensive high schools with lots of courses that kids can take, and actually they all want to take so many more courses than they can even take in their schedule. And so I think that the 40.3% is impressive, because each year 40% of your class is taking it. So over the course of 4 years, they have ample opportunities to take arts. So I would and I'm sorry, on state participation and state testing, the benchmark is 95, and we are regularly at 98 or 99% of our students taking all state testing. So that has, we actually just got a report in for the state testing that ended on Friday, and we're solidly 98 98.5 or 98.9, very, very solid in those metrics. So we are ensuring that every child is assessed, and these reports therefore represent the entire, a substantial group of the population. So with that, I just wanted to end with a few highlights. Some of the things we're very, excited about. We continue to see some good growth in our student population in terms of diversity. Very excited about the chronic absenteeism. It's very hard to educate the students if they're not there. The decrease in suspensions and expulsions that Andy went over, I think, are really exciting. We want to see those are some of the lowest rates for some of our subgroups in terms of suspension that we've seen outside of the pandemic year where we didn't come to school and no one got suspended. These are some of the lowest rates we've ever seen. Really excited about our increases in college and career readiness. We have no achievement gap in our four-year cohort graduation, which would say that all of our subgroups are graduating within the acceptable range, and we have very strong college going and college persistence rates. And with that, I'll turn it over to some questions, open it up to you for discussion.
All right, thank you so much for the information. Yes, Ethan.
So this is probably me, but when you went through the slides at the beginning, it wasn't clear to me what years it was. Then I finally figured
5 years
it out.
ago.
So probably if you could in the future, next time, just say 22 to 23.
For when we did comparison years?
Well, no, when you just started. When you showed the first presentation, it showed percentages.
Oh, okay.
It's just me.
Yeah. No, it's okay. I just to clarify, we had been looking at 5-year periods in many of these cases, so that would go back to 2017, 18.
He just means like that this is the year we're looking at.
Yeah, all the data is for 22, 23.
I understand
Yep.
now, but it took me a while. Question for you. The chronic absenteeism, when I saw this over the weekend, I didn't remember it being that high, and I realized in context, it's actually down from where it's been.
Yes.
I was surprised 2018 and 19 was before the pandemic, was actually higher, what you showed for chronic. Did I get it
No,
wrong?
the slide I showed you, Ethan, didn't have chronic absenteeism. It had the state suspension data. The chronic absenteeism data that Ann shared is from last year it's from the 2001-2 school year to 2022-23 school year.
It was from 22.
2022, 23, and from the year prior.
Oh, I thought I saw 18 and 19. on the
You
graph.
did on the suspension data. That was a
Suspension
different
data?
5-year look.
Okay, so then my question is, 15% struck me as being high for female.
So chronic absenteeism, both in the district, during the pandemic and immediately following the pandemic, jumped up to about 20% or above 20%. We're down roughly 4.5% to a 14.8, or basically to a 15% this year. That's still 5 points below the current state average. So that tells you, in terms of context, how high, chronic absenteeism was probably at the state. I don't have the number, but it was probably up near 30% for the state average.
The state currently is 20, under this report, the state was 20.
Yeah,
And
I'm
we
saying during the pandemic.
Oh, it was
probably 10 points higher.
Immediately following the pandemic, the state average, and again, it's following also a national average, a national trend.
Yeah,
But we are excited. It's still much higher than 5 years ago, 10 years ago, but it's working its way back down. Excuse me, I'm going to cough.
What number is
when students attend the whole year, 182 days, 10% of their year, so 18% if they are fully enrolled. But it's really 10% of 18 days, right? 10% or 18 days if they're fully enrolled. If they were only here 130 days, for instance, they can transfer it in, it would be 13 days.
And understand that's for any absence.
Yes,
That's for, we're going on vacation, we're going sick, doctor's appointment, excused, unexcused, regardless, it's for any absence.
So I guess my question was, is there a target we're aiming for, realizing?
Well, we'd like to get back to pre-pandemic levels, which was about 5 or 6%, if I remember correctly.
All right. Yep. And then one last question, and this is again probably me. The athletic one, I didn't understand at all.
Athletic?
Yeah, when you have the page, Yeah, there was, page 4.
Page 4?
Yeah, physical fitness. Because it has 61, 72, 54, 70, then the district's
So, yes.
31.
I think I can explain that to you. So that's the number you're seeing, 61.6 under grade 4. That's grade 4,
Yeah.
61.6. That's the percentage of students who reach the target in the sit and reach, for instance. And for grade 6, it was 76.9%.
Yeah, I'm good with all that. I was looking at the district, trying to figure out how do you get from these percentages?
Right, because that it would be the children who passed all 4.
Okay, got it. All right, that answers it. Thank you. So it's not an average, it's just,
No, it's if you did sit and reach and curl up but not push up, you wouldn't be considered in
Okay.
that all tests. For
got it. Thank you.
Claire. Yeah, for the students, the 6-year graduation rate, can you help explain, the requirements for graduation would differ? Is that based on your IEP? If you're a non-reader, non-writer, what makes you not graduate in 6 years? Is it because you withdrew? I mean, how do you meet the same standards if so many kids are that different in post-secondary?
Melissa will take that.
Yeah, that's a really great question, Claire, because I would, as Anne was describing those larger cohorts, and we do expect that trend to continue because, as Claire mentioned, some of our students who do not graduate on time because they require transition-only supports after graduation. So while they've met graduation criteria in terms of meeting the credits needed for graduation, students who require transition-only services and attend our post-secondary transition program are not considered graduated until they take their diploma. And so they'll be reflected and potentially impact the district's data around graduation rates. We do, for students with disabilities, try by all means to keep students on a traditional graduation track for the 4 years. With the change in graduation requirements, we've found that we have been successful in doing that, barring anything like chronic absenteeism, students missing extended periods of time in a school day. But through their IEP, we're able to program for students who might be close to or significantly different from grade level standards. And we do that through our continuous services and course offerings that we have at both comprehensive high schools.
And I wanted to piggyback the fluctuation in the 6-year graduation rate because it's a singular cohort of students, so it's just the graduating class. In this case, I believe it's the 2020 cohort. The difference of one student either meeting that 6-year criteria or even one student greater or one student fewer in the denominator of students can create a 1% or a 2% fluctuation that, the difference between 8 out of 9 versus 9 out of 10, is a percentage point. But in all practical reality, it's not a significant difference in terms of the program. So overall, the idea that graduation rate was 1.9% lower is not necessarily an indicator of any concerns that we would immediately have. We obviously look at everything, but just to share that.
So with this excess cost reimbursement after 4 times the per pupil expenditure. So at 20,000 roundabout in this report, you then would have to spend 80,000, and then after the 80,000, you would get that percentage reimbursement, correct? So this extra 60,000, is that just built into the whole school budget that's not, before you're reimbursed, you have to go 4 times over the per pupil? That 60,000 comes from where? And then we know we have to budget in what is not reimbursed beyond that 4 times.
Yeah, so in terms of the budgeting component of that question, a lot of that money, because a lot of that excess cost that you're describing is tied into potentially tuition-based placements out of district, so it's built directly into our into the budget line relating to, tuition, which you saw a sizable increase in what we budgeted this coming year based on our knowledge of what the excess cost is again, and as well as our projection for number of students who will return to the district, number of students who will be outplaced to the district, and the net change.
But that tuition is beyond the 4 times, correct?
Yeah, that's how we are looking at that figure. We're looking at the costs that we'll have to incur.
But the 60,000.
Yeah, we incur. I hear what you're saying. If the average per pupil is 20,000, 4.5 times that is 90,000. Technically, a $70,000 difference before we incur reimbursement. So we do have money because we're being reimbursed. We have money that we put into the out of district tuition line to account for those differences.
Gail.
Thanks for the presentation. I have a question on the demographics of the student enrollment here. And I'm just curious, like, why these numbers seem to, and I don't know if you are going to know this, but why the numbers of the different demographics, and I'm talking, like white students, black students, Hispanic students, they differ significantly from the town demographics. So when the census was done, these numbers are like, and I'm not talking like a point or two, I mean, there's significant differences between what we are seeing in the schools, your percentages, and the demographics of the town. And I don't know why that is. My second question, which kind of is part of that, is in the category of 2 or more races, is that, so for example, if somebody is Asian and black, and are they being counted twice, or they're just being counted in the 2 or more races category?
They're counted in 2 or more races.
Just as the 2 or more races, as I understand.
So they would be in the
They're not
other
counted
town.
twice.
Okay, and if you can answer the.
I believe the answer, maybe Andy knows a lot more about this than I do, but it's very typical in most districts I've worked in too, that the population of the town is a different age demographic than the population of the school, which is basically 3 or 4 or 5 years old till 18. And you'll see the demographic shift in the younger people, where the town population is, 0 to 100 maybe. And so perhaps the older population is different, or, significantly different than the younger population. I've seen this in many towns that I've been, where the younger people are more diverse if you're only looking at them as a group. I don't know if Andy or anybody has anything to add, but.
I think that covers a lot of it. I think it's the same struggle that we oftentimes see in our classrooms in attracting a workforce that represents our students. Our workforce may represent more of the demographics of an aged population or of a town, and less of our current student body.
But, and again, I'm no expert on censuses, but I thought the census really takes everybody into account. They're not just, the town census isn't only looking at an older demographic.
No, certainly. I think what they're trying to say is that it's not uniform. So the notion that, I don't know, I'll pick a category here. The Asian population for this given year was 10.3% of our school population was Asian. That doesn't mean that the town's going to have it's not uniformly distributed, that there's an equal number of parents, an equal number of grandparents, an equal number of single individuals who have no children in the schools. So those demographics are going to differ, and I think it would be interesting to look at school demographics 10 years ago and compare them to census data, today, as using the school demographics, as they're saying, more as the predictor of the directionality of demographics moving forward. But I was glad you brought the question forward, because I wanted to point out, our diversity not only is increasing among, these lines of race or ethnicity, but we often talk about our high needs population, and in the same 5-year period, we've seen a fairly significant increase in our number of English learners. They were up basically almost 2%. Our percentage of free and reduced lunch was up 5% from 5 years ago. and our students with disabilities, as Melissa has been sharing, has continued to grow. It was up 5%, excuse me very much, it was up 4% from the 2022 school year, 2022-2023, to the 5 years previous, and it's ticked up again, for this current year. So we do continue to see greater diversity in that high needs population, which points to specific programming relative to our special education programming, relative to our support for our English learners in our ESOL program, and then certainly just our general outreach and wraparound for all students relative to any needs they might have based on socioeconomics. So interesting that those statistics are showing not only an equivalent, but even potentially combined together a more marked increase than just diversity all by itself, just kind of who we are culturally.
Latoya. I just have two questions. One was about the 87% graduation rate for Black students and just wanting to understand more about that. Is it because a percentage of those students are on the sixth-year track, or students that have disabilities? And then my second question was about students with disabilities and the suspension rate and trying to understand the racial demographics there. Is there an intersection between that percentage and Black students or Latino students? Is it separated? Just kind of how that all works.
I can quickly jump in on the second piece there. The state doesn't track within the subgroups there, and you do have crossover between the different groups. When we sit down and when we look at each building, when we look at our trends and such, we do separate that and we break that down, because again, we're looking never on this are we looking at it from just a standpoint of the numbers and rates and such. We're looking at it from an individual standpoint.
That said, we also had a 2% decrease in the gap between our students of color for suspension and our students not of color. So we are trending in the right direction. I don't know if you'll remember, Andy, you might know this, Ann, you might know this, Julio, you might remember from being a principal. In terms of graduation rate, my recollection, and I don't have this off the top of my head, but my recollection is once a student's enrolled as a 9th grader, boom, you're in the cohort. And so if you move out of district, if whatever happens to you, if you move out of district and don't graduate from another district, you count against our 4-year cohort rate because you started in West Hartford as a 9th grader. That's correct. So the, when you look at intersectionality of whatever demographic it might be, and whether or not they are staying in district for the full 4 years, if they're transitioning out for any reason, if they happen to be in special ed, and I would venture to guess that there's intersectionality across all of our demographics within the group that's going to be counted for the 6-year cohort. But those are all factors that will play into that 4-year cohort graduation rate, and it's definitely just interestingly, just mathematically, the larger your subgroup that you want to disaggregate and talk about, the more resistant they're going to be to those fluctuations of those smaller pockets of folks who might have a special situation. So that's a part of it, because specifically in our Black population, I know, relatively speaking, they're one of our smaller subgroups that we do look at. We're sometimes just at 10% or just under 10%, whereas our Asian population and definitely our Hispanic population has come well above that.
One of the things I'll just say is, the advantage of that group being, not significantly large is that I remember as principal, we would do a deep dive into who are they? And then you start to look at the individual stories, right? And I know oftentimes, like looking at some of the students that Melissa was talking about, like we'd say, yes, like them not meeting that 4-year graduation was appropriate, and actually that was the right thing to do for that child, right? And so we would have those conversations, then looking at, hey, where did that kid go? And trying to track them down, and then realizing, oh, they went there, and it really became out of our control, yet they impacted our numbers. And I know that the principals continue to do that, and I think that's where it gets more powerful, right? And I would share those stories with our faculty, not names, but we would look at the data and say, like, hey, when you look at this number, is that actually good? right? And we would pull some things out and to look at those pieces. But I think that's the piece that, Paul brings up. And sometimes you look at the number and you think like, oh, that's a disappointing result. And then you dive into it and you're like, actually, no, there's a lot to celebrate there. So.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I was just concerned because it was lower, on the lower side in comparison. And I think I was just wondering if it was because of academic issues and students just being behind. So just hearing, that there are these other factors is definitely helpful. And then the deep dive into who they are and thinking about those targeted interventions. So thank you.
Jason.
I was curious if you, what you attribute the decline on the DPI to the ELA scores is.
Yeah. I would say that we were quite around the COVID time, somewhat flat in ELA, and Paul and I had talked about this quite a bit because we had a district focus on math, and we were seeing some of the gains we wanted. We had made specific instructional moves there, and we were seeing some gains, and we were very, very flat in math. And then during the pandemic, we weren't flat anymore. We're starting to go down, and we were looking at a whole host of factors. You may know that the state has recently passed legislation around something called the Right to Read Act, which is an act that is promoting something called the science of reading, which is a way of looking at reading, I would say, that emphasizes the 5 foundations of reading much more than we have in the past. So it has gone from some literacy emphasis on perhaps back to a literacy emphasis that balances phonics, phonemic awareness with comprehension with others, and getting back to, I wouldn't say basics or foundation, that wouldn't be a fair estimation, but a more balanced approach to some of the foundational skills that is necessary will be a move in the right direction. Another move I think that we need to continue to emphasize and evaluate is literacy across the curriculum, which is really important to look at how your social studies, your science classes, especially in the secondary level, are supporting reading. And we have a team looking at it because I am concerned about it. When it was flat at a high level, you were perhaps trying to tinker with some of the edges and say, what can move that. But in the last few years, I've seen a decrease, and I will be taking a much stronger look at it. I don't have an answer for what's the exact cause, but I do think we can look at some of the solutions to literacy in many different content areas, maybe a reemphasis of that in science, in social studies, in health. And then at the younger grades, we will be fully diving into the science of reading and bringing that right to read legislation, which will try to diagnose early reading problems earlier and possibly get a stronger foundation instead of perhaps moving into comprehension as quickly. I will be happy to continue to give updates on that.
I'm going to caveat one additional data point that definitely may have impact, and I want to say this in the correct way because it's about the subgroup. It's again within our high needs. If you look at the number of English language learners, and I happen to have the 22-23 profile report as well as the previous year. So in 22-23 we had 705 English language learners. In the previous year we had 585. So that's an increase of 120 English language learners. Now that's across all the different grade levels, but a significant number of those are going to be within the tested grades 3 through 8 and 11. And the notion that I'm still becoming English language proficient, and yet I am required by state law to take a grade level mastery assessment. It is unlikely, depending on, certainly for a first year student, to necessarily meet that grade level expectation. We monitor very closely the language proficiency results, but also the long-term acquisition of skills towards language proficiency on the grade level assessments, which are not a one, we're always looking at a 1 year static kind of a piece here. So when we start to tease those things out and look at the performance over time, seeing the increase in a single year by that dramatic a number of English language learners, and then recognizing, some slight dips in the overall number of our language scores, it may also be a contributing factor. I can't tell you with any authority right now, it accounts for this percentage. And I want to recognize that that's not trying to lay anything on a group where the expectation is really one more of growth toward that target over time, not a singular year acquisition of that skill.
Looking at the DPI targets, do you have any idea of how? No, there you go. Looking at the DPI targets, do you have 75? Do you have any understanding of how many districts actually meet those targets?
I don't have that with me, but these are available. These are publicly available on EdSite. And I haven't, done a deep dive into who meets the targets, but we'll often look in previous reports of how we are performing relative to, we talked about DIRG B, which is not an active DIRG, it's not, but we still look at how our performance is versus state and versus similar districts. So I haven't looked at it through the DPI lens, but I've looked at it through the raw score lens. But it would be interesting, I think, to see it that way. And these are, as I say, publicly available for every school district.
Right, because I can see in the data that we're above the average.
Yeah.
I just was curious if anybody's actually meeting that,
There are,
DPI
yeah,
target.
absolutely, there are some. And I just haven't looked at it that way or counted in that manner.
And so I just have one more. It was really dense material, at least for me. And I'm just curious, looking at this as a snapshot in time, 22, 23, what does this tell us about how we're continuing to rebound from COVID?
I think that's an excellent question, because it's exactly how you want to look at this. You want to see the trends. As I said, I pointed out some of the things and Melissa and Julio and Andy are looking at all the areas they are responsible for. In my area, obviously, I like the math growth quite a bit. I want to see how that continues. I really want to dig into the ELA and work on that. I'm very pleased with the chronic absenteeism. Well, I'm not pleased with it. I'm pleased with the decrease in the percentage, because we had it as a named focus this year, but to see it was coming in line last year, and to see the effect of some of the, I think it's really important to look at the effect of the decisions you made. For instance, we asked all our principals to start sending letters again. And some parents were a little bit like, why are you sending these letters? And this is new again. We haven't gotten letters in years. But we said we're resetting expectations. So I think it's important in every one of our areas, that's just one example, to say we made this specific effort by doing this specific thing, what was the outcome? And I think that's very important, in Andy's world, and I certainly let him speak about it, but I'm very excited about the decrease in the exclusionary discipline. The suspensions and the expulsion rates are so low, but those are pretty exciting. And I think we have to look at what's attributed to some of the measures, the restorative justice measures, or some other factors that we've put in place to see if those are some of the reasons we're seeing lower suspension rates. I don't know, Melissa, Julio. I just think it's important to do what Paul would call in his military world an after-action review of, you made certain decisions, and now here you have your data, and which one you can't be perfectly precise of what moved what needle, but I think it's important to engage in the activity anyway, and give your best guesses with a group of people who are pretty knowledgeable, and then move forward, and then have your next plan informed by that.
And I appreciate, everything that Ann said, in terms of trend analysis. I want to just say it goes back to Ethan's question relative to, hey, what are some metrics for our overall work, even under the equity umbrella. And I think that, Theresa kind of hit on it in her explanation. When this team comes forward and they talk about the trends, we see trends. We see gaps closing, whether they're equity gaps, whether they're gaps from increases that got created by the pandemic. You certainly saw that. You see that in the behavioral data. You see some good questions kind of coming up about that relative to achievement data, graduation rate data. What is the trend? Has that gap been stagnant? Has it increased? Has it decreased? Is there a reason why that makes sense? And how at the end of the day, we used to talk about this all the time. The data is not necessarily ever an answer. It's just a tool to ask the next smart question. And this team does that every day. So appreciative for the efforts.
Shaena.
So I have a comment and two questions. Just on the, I think a lot of questions are coming up about the comparison from prior years to like kind of a year-over-year comparison, and just wanted to point out, in my day job, I live on EdSite, and there's a Connecticut School Report Card link where you can look at every single district in the state and even at the school level and see this data year over year. And it might be helpful to get like the snapshot version of that to look at it with this, because it was helpful to see that comparison in the presentation, but to not have it in the pre-reading, it kind of then it just could answer some questions in advance. Two questions. One is the graduation or the college enrollment or entrance rate, seeing that I was calculating about 166 students do not show up at a 2 or 4 year college after they graduate, and just curious how, if you're understanding where they're going and what they're doing. And I know that our accountability index doesn't really give credit for other paths that students might take, and I'd like to know if the district is paying attention to that, to think about how to support those students as best as possible.
I can tell you, and I think Paul might say similar, is about a few months ago, we would be working with the school counseling department to see if they're meeting with students individually, one-on-one, to see what those plans are. We've gone as far as to ask if a child's saying, I'm going to take a gap year, we'll ask them what that really means. Does that mean the gap year is you're traveling in a program, or does that mean you're waiting a year to make a decision? Does that mean, what is that? So I think the one-on-one conversations with children through the counseling department, when they don't have a 2 or 4 year plan or a military plan, we do have a small group going to the military every year. We do have some students who enter through either readiness, readiness to continue in school, or financial, who often enter in second semester too of, they might not enter in
Fall,
September, but they enter, and I've seen that rate, and I've always thought it's pretty interesting that that rate's higher, because that says, telling me some kids aren't captured in the fall, but they're captured in January through the clearinghouse data. And so I can't give you an exact answer, except what I can say is that those conversations counselors have with every senior, to, even when a child's not sure, to help them shore that plan up a little. It doesn't have to be school right away, but what is it? Is it going to be work? Is it going to be some kind of other engagement? So I can assure you the conversations are happening, and the counselors keep that data. It doesn't show up here because this only accounts for 2 and 4 year.
Yeah, and I don't have any concern about the number, more normalizing the fact that there are lots of other paths to success, and it's okay that these students might choose not to go to college, but what supports are being provided for those other pathways, and making those all equally celebrated or recognized.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I think the conversations are the most important, just for those counselors to help the children think of, you don't have to go to school right away, but what's your plan? You're going to work for a semester and then perhaps try again? Or there are some schools that also aren't collected through the clearinghouse. A small percentage of schools aren't reporting there, so try to keep in mind some of those factors.
And then my second question was just curious about the arts access, because I think of West Hartford as having such an excellent arts program, so I was surprised to see how much lower it is than the state average.
I think it's attributed to the number of amazing courses we have. There's a large group of students who want to take our AP classes. There's a large group of students who like CTE. There's a large group of students who like to specialize in have favorite teachers and want to take 3 social science classes, and there's just a lot of choice. I recognize what you're saying, because it's 60% that we'd be looking at in any given year. We're more like 40 or 42. I think we've been as high as 45. But Julio, you're the principal.
Yeah, I know one, and I haven't looked at it since I haven't been sitting in that chair for a little while, but I know one of the things that at one point I looked at, and frustrated maybe was the right word to say, is that in some districts it's just how you code a course. And so like I looked at a district, which I won't need to name, and they had like their graphics course was in the arts, and our graphics course, I mean, we have tons and tons of students that are enrolled in those courses, and if you simply coded them that way, you could hit that, that benchmark. But at the end of the day, it's not the instruction that we're really trying to drive, and it also would change a lot of the the requirements for that particular teacher and what they're doing with students. So again, we've decided to make decisions that are in the best interest of what we think our students need. But you could finagle it that way, I guess, if you wanted to.
You could.
And I imagine any extracurricular like a lot of students probably get to their arts passion through after-school programming, which wouldn't be
No, that's
reflected
not
at all in
picked
this.
up,
Okay.
But Julio's absolutely right, because we have looked at those classes and we've decided to keep, to stay as true to the arts designation as possible.
Any other questions? Ethan?
Just one last comment, and it's following up at Shannon's point. I was thrilled to see this many numbers, but probably if you could put something like a comparison would help with the context. But I'd
Noted.
like a report with numbers. So,
Thank you.
Thank
I know
you.
you like numbers.
Made my day.
Ethan, bless your heart. Yes. Any other questions or comments? Oh, pardon me. Yes, Claire.
So something to share too about the arts is that in elementary, you have art every week, and middle school, art is also one of the rotating semesters. So when you get to high school, it's more, do you have a passion or a talent or a real strong interest? And I've seen the curriculum offerings, and I can understand why there might be some drop-off in the fine arts.
This is just a quick question. Does arts include like music
Yes.
also?
Any
For-
performing arts, music, theater. If we had a dance program, we don't. And then fine arts, our visual
Fine
arts. And yes, those are all included.
Those are all included. Thanks.
Other questions or comments? All right. Well, thank you so very much. Thank you. Thank you. And now moving on to routine matters, where we will receive our financial report and seeking a motion that the Board of Education approve the financial report for the period ending April 30th, 2024. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Ethan. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Claire. Discussion. So good to see you, Liz, and I believe Claire is leading the way this time. All right.
Okay. For the general fund, it's projected we'll have a surplus of $50,000 this year. The salary line shows a $310,000 savings in basically made up of teacher salaries and paraprofessional salaries. This is offset by the cost of the substitutes and teachers' assistants, which has been consistent throughout the year. The total benefit shows a surplus of $50,000 as mentioned. Unemployment services were lower than expected, and the special ed tuition reimbursement is a $500,000 hit as well. Our tuition reimbursement of 85%, as we've mentioned before, has been cut to 68, or is it 60? 67 now, so that's the deficit of the 500,000. The district has received $12,343,000 in expected grant awards with carry forward authorizations. The title grants total $281,000, and the IDA grants $265,000. The balance of those grants are expected to be allocated by year end, except for the multi-year grants. Our special funds shows an increasing interest income of over $100,000, which will help cover the summer school over budget of $40,000. Education services reimbursement shows an overage of the $550,000, which is still based on the reimbursement percentage. And in nutrition services, operating income of $109,000 for the month of April. This is in line with expectations. We're still receiving the free breakfast and reduced lunches, but we're not sure about whether next year, is there any word yet, whether this will continue?
I haven't heard any word. It's my understanding that we're going back just to a regular paid service.
And
Those
no
families,
breakfast.
exactly. Those families who qualify for free or reduced lunch will certainly have that benefit, but everyone else will be back on a paid meal service.
Okay. So the interest income in the nutrition services was close to $116,000. There have been purchases and installation of cafeteria equipment that was $889,000. And work on the hall cafeteria remodel will begin this summer. Conard plans are underway. And the total fund for nutrition services has a balance of $3.4 million.
All right, thank you so much, Claire. Questions, comments, teammates, regarding the financial report that we just received? Seeing none, again, the motion's on the floor to approve them as presented. All of those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? The ayes have it. Thank you very much, Liz. Thank you, Claire. And Ethan, thank you for representing on the committee as well. Now moving on to approval of the minutes. Seeking a motion that the Board of Education approve the minutes of the regular Board of Education meeting of May the 21st, 2024. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Shannon. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jason. Discussion. All of those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. Thank you so much. Moving on to information and reports. Do we have any board members who would like to communicate reports from other boards or organizations? Seeing none, any other information or discussions? I do just want to briefly say, and I'm recognizing the late hours, so I will not belabor the point, but again, with this being the last meeting of this academic school year, want to wish everyone a safe summer. A safe summer, however you may spend that time. I don't know which camera to look at, so that's why I'm panning. However you may spend that time, please be safe, because for those who are returning next year, we look forward to seeing you. And for those that are moving on, as, boy, Liam is still here, we will be cheering you on from afar. We're so very proud of you. So thank you, thank you. Moving on to future, and of course, our teachers and our staff and our administrators. Thank you, thank you, thank you. If you were not here, we would not be here. The students would not be here. So endless thanks to all of you, and of course, our families. Thank you so very much for this collective effort. Absolutely, yes.
I just, because it's come up a couple times on the board, is hearing about from our legislative delegation about issues happening at the state level. There's going to be a legislative wrap-up from the 2024 session next Thursday at 6 p.m. Here in the town chambers, and it would be an opportunity to hear what's on their mind and maybe what we could anticipate in the 2025 session.
Thank you, Shannon. Yes, we want to be civically engaged. Thank you. Panning, any other? All right. Now moving on to future business. Announcement of future meeting dates. My, oh my, looking into the next school year. All right. We will come together again on Tuesday, September the 3rd, 2024 for our regular Board of Education meeting here at 7 o'clock in room 314, followed by Tuesday, September the 17th, again, our regular Board of Education meeting here at the Town Hall at 7 p.m. And then once again, Tuesday, October the 1st, 2024, regular Board of Education meeting, 7 o'clock here at the Town Hall. And then Tuesday, October the 15th, regular Board of Education meeting at 7 o'clock here at the Town Hall. Do we have a request for any future agenda items? Seeing none, do we have any visitors who would like to make a comment? Seeing none, we do not have an executive session, therefore seeking a motion to adjourn. Oh, y'all want to stay longer? I'm sorry. Who made it? Ethan? Ethan. Thank you, Ethan. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Claire. Meeting adjourned at 9:48.